What's the announcement?
Tell everyone you're nice.
Announcing. What's the announcement?
Tell everyone you're nice.
That was a fun trick. Hello, everyone. I must say, I'm not that.
I wasn't sure where that was going, but
Well, I was just experimenting. I didn't know it could do that.
It's
still broadcasting.
recording and broadcasting.
No, it's not me now. It's
Oh, it's broadcasting what we're
I
doing.
think it's probably Dana. He's perhaps left.
Oh, he has a window open.
He's got a window open, yeah, and
Okay.
he's
I can fix that.
And he's
he's
not there. You just
disappeared
mute
off.
him.
I was yeah.
There we go. I muted
Yeah,
him.
yeah, okay.
Way. Hi everybody,
Hello.
and how was your day at work?
Ugh.
Yeah, let's we not go there.
Well, the morning was fine.
Okay, is that because
Actually,
you weren't at work in the morning?
No, I was at work this morning. It was a very nice morning of clinic, seeing patients, very nice people, reasonable problems, stuff I
Alright.
could help with. And this afternoon was fine. It was just procedures and injections. But wow, the just a lot of personalities today. Let's say that.
In inverted commas.
Mm-hmm. Personalities.
Hey, Dana, we muted you because you had a window open and it was playing,
Rebroadcasting.
looping the whole broadcast. Also, you're listening to the rebroadcast. You're not listening to us live right now. So you need
Hello.
to. Maybe I can unmute him. I can't unmute him. He's got to unmute himself.
Dana, unmute yourself.
He can't.
What do you mean you can't? One.
You
First
moron.
word. First word. How many
First
syllables?
word, 3 syllables.
Sounds like.
What the heck is he doing?
Is it a book or a
You know what
poem?
happened is when you went live on YouTube, and then the damn YouTube window wouldn't open up, so that's why I wasn't unmuting myself.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you couldn't get it open again?
I couldn't get it to open up so I could mute the darn broadcast. So now it's muted.
Good.
Anyways, hi.
Hi. I just closed that screen once I have the
Yeah, that's
chat popped
better
up.
because then you don't use any of your bandwidth to supply the video.
Well, then,
Just
but if I
close.
pause it, it doesn't do anything, right?
I don't know if it continues to buffer or not. I just close it, and after I popped out the chat.
Yeah, I already popped up my chat. I'm always afraid I'm gonna blow up that pop out if I go ahead.
Yeah,
and close
if you close the other screen, it won't have any effect.
Okay, well, good. Let me just check.
There we go.
Hi, all. Yep, there we go. Perfect.
All right. Well, hello everyone in the chat room. We have several people there. That's nice. How
The
many do
faithful.
we have?
the few.
Yeah. Is there a way to
Few
tell how
is
many are
strong.
in the chat?
Yeah, you have to actually go back to the YouTube page though to see.
Okay.
If you close
Well,
it, then
if
it's
I
not there.
Oh no, I do it. I can do it in my chat.
Oh, you can?
Armando and Dana and Frick and Jeff Nielsen, Jordan Rose, Kent Hayes, Liz Piper, Michael Kuipers, Neil Lanwarn, Nick Anderson, and Tanya W.
Come on down.
That
Price is Right.
vertical,
Yep.
those three dots, the ellipsis, vertical ellipsis.
Oh yeah, participants.
Yeah.
You can
I see
toggle
that.
timestamps and send feedback too. Whatever a
Interesting.
toggle timestamp is.
Oh, it just shows
I
you
don't know.
what time people sent their messages.
Oh.
So it looks like there's about 12 messages that came through at 4:14 p.m. Eastern time.
Wow. Okay. Is the video exposure okay with mine? I know that's going to change as the sun starts.
What about
to
exposure? I'm sorry. It's just
Indecent
He's
exposure.
exposing himself.
I see that.
Is my video any better, by the way?
It's a
better than what?
little
Yeah.
grainy. It looks fine though.
Okay, because remember I downloaded that program. And it's the first time I'm using it since.
The color is better, definitely.
Yeah,
You're
but
not
I don't
reading
think
anymore.
it's not going to fix the resolution because it deals with whatever the highest resolution your camera can deliver. If that makes sense.
Yes, of course. It does. So I just ordered the new camera. I just want to see how it would work
Oh, okay.
with the new program. See if it was any better. It's a little
Yeah.
bit better, but not
Yeah.
substantially better.
I think it looks better to me as a.
Well, I mean, with this face, it's definitely not a face or voice for radio.
The color is better, much better, much more saturated color, I think.
Normal colors.
Yeah.
So I can see the bags under my eyes because I've been up since 3 a.m.
Why?
I went on call at 3 a.m. the last 2 days in a row. I woke up, checked my schedule, and never fell back asleep.
Oh.
So there you go.
Well, that's silly.
I know. Crazy.
Okay. Let's see here. Let me. We need to do our clapping or clacking. Let me make sure that this is ordered.
Oh, yeah. Let me get that thing set up real quick here. That'd be good.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Everybody else ready?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. 3, 2, 1, clap. Oh, you guys are all like together. That's awesome.
Really? They sounded all different to me.
Every one of them sound different to me.
Oh well, we'll sort it out. The last episode that I'm still editing. Sorry, the Hangout on Air audio sounded pretty good, so I didn't have to use your individual files.
Good.
Fair
Did I
enough.
ever send it to you?
I don't know. I didn't look for it. All right. Sound check on this. Probably going to be too high as it usually is.
WAPG, it's the airline pilot guy.
How's that?
Sound
to
good to
me.
me.
Okay. And Evernote over here. Okay.
My house smells good. I'm cooking.
What are you cooking?
Jewish penicillin.
I feel like I should probably be able to work out what that is.
Moldy bread.
It's chicken soup.
Chicken soup.
Chicken soup.
The missus is not feeling well. So I ran out just before the show, picked up all the necessary, well, most of them. The supermarket didn't have exactly what I wanted, but was close enough to make some homemade chicken soup.
Sounds good.
Getting hungry thinking about it. It's time for a drink, I guess.
All right, let's don't talk about it. Shall we start?
Sure.
WAPG, it's the airline pilot guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 345.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1305 in the Ambassador Hotel in Wichita, Kansas. Today's show was recorded on the 17th of October, 2018.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy. Put your ride and it's flying by. With the airline pilot guy.
In today's episode, an Air Idiot Express jet takes out the ILS antennas and hits the airport perimeter wall. A Belgian Air Force mechanic accidentally opened fire on and destroyed an F-16 fighter jet. A private jet captain's killed when his pressurized door opens on top of them. More news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, the wave scrapers. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. Flight 345 is ready for pushback. I missed it this week. Darn it. Oh well. Shall I do it again or not? I put too much in there for my intro stuff.
Nah,
Do you want
redo it.
actual commentary on that?
No,
Okay.
I'm just going to do whatever I'm going to do.
Rhetorical, rhetorical.
Yeah,
You are the boss. It's your
yeah,
choice.
I'm going to do it again. I was not satisfied.
Speak
with
faster.
that. I'll just have to talk
All right,
faster.
well, while you're doing that, I'm going to reset my internet too, so hopefully I'll be back in time because
Okay.
I don't know what's going on with it. It did
And if
not
not,
like all-
we'll just pause and then we'll
Okay.
start from there. All right, here we go.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 345.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1305 in the Ambassador Hotel in Wichita, Kansas. Today's show is recorded on the 17th of October, 2018.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Would you ride and he's flying by? With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, an Air India Express jet takes out the ILS antennas, hits an airport perimeter wall. A Belgian Air Force mechanic accidentally opens fire on and destroys an F-16 fighter jet. A private jet captain's killed when a pressurized door opens on top of them. More news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, the wave scrapers. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 345 is ready for pushback. Yay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast where we cover this week's aviation news and also answer your feedback. And joining me to help in that endeavor, we have a doctor, a skydiver, a marathon runner, a strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot. Her name, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. Good to see you this afternoon. Glad to be finished with work for the day and here to chat with you fine gentlemen about some aviation stuff and generally have a good time. Looking forward to our show.
And also joining us from across the pond in England in his studio, a professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff, and hi, other co-producers and presenters. Isn't this wonderful? Another lovely show.
And also joining us, let's hold it down a little bit there. Man, Dana, I told you not to start the motorcycle while we're doing the show. From his stately southern mansion in Smyrna, Georgia, barbecue master, bourbon, scotch, vodka, connoisseur, motorcycle rider, party boat skipper, and captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be back and looking forward to another fantastic show. I think I need to adjust that intro, though, a little bit. It sounds like I'm a heavy drinker, which I'm not. Just a enjoyer of particular spirits. And other than that, great to be back and seeing everybody this evening.
All right. We'll be happy to alter it and take out whatever you want me to take out there. All right. Well, good to see you, Dana. We've missed you. You've been absent in the last 2-3 shows.
Yeah, take a
Actually, no. You made a
Cameo.
an appearance on a cameo appearance on one of those. shows.
343.
Yeah.
Yes.
You were completely absent last
No,
week.
342
but,
actually cameo. 343 was football, and then last week I was out sick, so I was not able to attend the festivities that day.
We're so glad that you finally decided to go ahead and join us.
Well,
We're glad you're feeling better too. How about that?
yeah,
That's probably what I should say.
Yeah.
We're glad you're
Thank
feeling
you.
better, Dana.
thank
Welcome
you.
back.
It's a great thing to feel better. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's been eventful. So,
Well,
anyways,
why don't you fill us in on what's been happening with you?
well, not a whole lot last week. Unfortunately, I had a little automobile accident, so that's why I was unable to attend the show last week. So everybody's okay. I'm okay. The other party is okay. The blame is on the other party. So that's a big relief for me. And other than that, I had to call in sick because I was actually on short call. And I was just 2 hours away from 2.5 hours away when the accident occurred. So I had absolutely no choice. And then I had no vehicle. That's when Hurricane Michael made its appearance in the Atlanta area. My only form of transportation would have been my motorcycle. So I just had to stay out sick because I had no way to get to work, unfortunately. And I was still recovering from the accident. I was a little sore from it. So I just felt like it wasn't the best idea for me to be in an airplane responsible for everybody's lives. So I made the wise choice and decided not to go to work. Being that said, I still haven't flown since September 1st. And next week, I'm going to get the distinct pleasure of going into the simulator because I'm losing my landing currency, which we're supposed to have 3 takeoff and landings to full stop every 90 days. I don't have that. And unless I get a trip, and I was hoping the last 2 days I was on short call, a 2-hour call out versus my normal 12-hour call out to the airport. 2-hour call out from the time they call me until the time I'm, it's a rough 2 hours. It doesn't have to be exactly 2 hours. It's going to be a little less, a little more, but right in the 2-hour range from the time they call you until they expect you at the airport duty in. So I was on call starting at 3 a.m. the last 2 days. Figured with the bit of weather we had in the Atlanta area, low ceilings and some rain and fog, that they would have called me because I was number 1 to go. Well, guess what? No call either day. So it's been, I was full of hope and anticipation of being able to actually go to take flight into the skies, but they never called me. So my story is pretty short and uneventful. Next Tuesday is when I head into the sim. I will be doing a Cat 1 approach to minimums. I'll be doing a non-precision approach. I'll be doing a Cat 3 auto land and a few visual approaches with some crosswinds for recertification. So if I'm lucky enough to get a trip tomorrow or next Monday, then I will not have to go into the sim. Got my FAA medical all set. That was yesterday. And other than that, I'm good for another 6 months there unless anything happens, which I hope it doesn't.
Very good. Good to hear. And we're glad that you're feeling better.
Yes, much better. And very happy to see my friends at the APG. Everybody,
And we're happy to see you.
the
Glad to have you
co-host,
back.
my co-host, and of course on radio you can't see the beautiful faces, but it's always great to see the smiling faces. And can't forget about the chat rooms. Always nice to have the folks along with us in the chat room.
I think Nick is impersonating a squirrel again.
That's
I think
what
so.
I was thinking about.
I actually look more like a chipmunk.
Different rodent this time.
Now, if you listen to the previous show, you'll understand our what we're talking
The
about.
squirrel reference.
Hey, that was my beautiful face I was putting on there.
But no, you were
telling me when I'm beautiful, I look like a squirrel.
You look a lot like the squirrel teeth that you
Unfortunate.
were doing last time.
I was referencing Dr. Steph. I mean, let's be fair here.
Yeah,
I do
I look like a chipmunk.
No.
Keep
You're
digging,
the
Dana.
one-
Keep digging.
You're the one pleasant to look at.
Thank you very much indeed.
He's saying that you look like a squirrel, apparently.
Yeah.
No.
Uh,
Squirrels
it's
are
my
quite nice
fault.
to look at.
I haven't actually listened to the last show, so that's my.
Well, when
My-
you do, if and when you do, you'll understand the references we're making here.
Can I just say that I've seen so many squirrels this past week, and all I can think of every time I see a squirrel is Nick going.
That was funny. All right. Well, Nick, speaking of, no,
Hello, sir.
let's do Dr. Steph first. What have you been
Ladies
up to,
first,
young lady? Yes.
A whole lot of nothing actually, and it was wonderful. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of exciting things to report this week. I had stuff that I was planning on doing over the weekend, and then I said, you know what? Heck with it. I'm exhausted. I need sleep. I slept in both days. I did get in a 7-mile run on Sunday, but that was just kind of a light jog, shakeout, get back in the running game after a marathon type of thing. And yeah, gosh, what did I do? I don't know. I've been trying to get my eating and diet on a better track instead of a lot of fast food and stuff like that. So a couple trips to the supermarket over the weekend. I experimented with some new recipes, sent a picture of some granola bars that I made to the crew, and someone thought it looked like Taco's litter box. So apparently I have a
That
little
guy.
bit of work to do on my cooking
Who
skills.
could have been so rude?
I don't
I
know.
don't know who it could have been. Nick.
I'll have you know they're actually delicious despite what they might look like.
They smell okay too.
Edible at least.
Take that under advisement.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I commented on the fact that it didn't look anything like the picture that Dr. Seth had sent. That
Well, you
was
know, the
what they were
pictures-
supposed to look like.
Pictures in the cookbooks are always, I don't know. I can never
Cheats.
seem to.
They always cheat.
Yeah, they
as a
cheat.
cook.
You know, the lighting's right. Like they're not using the real. Actually, I think this cookbook does actually have the.
Wait a minute, my ribs and my everything looks like it does in the cookbook.
Yeah,
It
but
tastes
you're
even better
good at
because that
cooking
paper that
angrily.
you chew in the cookbook doesn't taste nearly as good as the paper you chew that I make for you.
excellent. A little less fibrous. I imagine.
Yes. A little less
Anyway.
chemical too.
So that's what I've been up to. I know it's not terribly exciting. It has nothing to do with flying or aviation, but I just needed a weekend to regroup.
It doesn't matter if it has anything to do with aviation or not, because we care about you and your life.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. And last but not least, we have our dear Captain Nick over there in the UK. How have you been, sir?
Pretty good, actually, up till very recently. But I've just done 2 Miamis with minimum rest in between, and they're pretty tough flights. They're longer than Atlanta, so encroaching on the 10-hour mark. But we get 3 pilots. The only problem is we don't actually need 3 pilots. So on the 330, we don't have any crew rest. So when it comes time for one of us to take a break and let the third pilot sit in our seat, there's actually nowhere to go. So the only thing really to do is just retreat to the back of the cockpit or wander around the cabin for a bit or something, which kind of negates the whole point of having rest. Of course, the company could set aside a seat for us to sit down and actually shut our eyes and get some rest there. But they say they don't need to because we can do the flight without 3 pilots. 3 pilots is just a contractual obligation they have because of the sector length, which was designed when we only flew aircraft with rest or that sort of thing. So we're kind of between the Delta and the Deep Blue Sea. Very luckily, we had a couple of seats that were in fact free on the airplane. So most of the time we managed to just get out of the flight deck and sit down somewhere else, which wasn't too bad, but it is a hell of a drag, particularly when you've not really recovered off the first trip when you're already into the second one. So it's a bit of a pain. And of course, being a long flight, we don't get much time to lay over. I guess we got about 20 hours in Miami, and you got to sleep twice and eat a couple of times during that. So not much time to do anything else. But the weather was lovely this time, as opposed to previously when Michael paid us a visit. Nice to see him, but I'm glad he won't be coming around for a while now. He did some damage, didn't he, that storm? Yeah. And in the layover I had at home, the 2 days I had at home, I was very pleased to see our friend Fred from San Fran was dashing around Europe, basically on his way through London to Chicago. Wow, where did that come from? To Germany. It's not like Chicago at all. And
Not quite the same. I mean, I was just in Chicago, and I'm wearing one of my Chicago Marathon shirts from like 6 years ago.
Oh, that might have been
And we were
Yeah,
discussing
there
it
you
in the chat room, so that's probably where it popped into
go.
your
Subliminal communication.
messages. Sorry about
So
that.
when he finished work on Friday, he popped over. We took him out for a meal, stayed the night, fed him some breakfast, threw him on the train, and then he flew out the next afternoon. So it was very pleasant to touch base with Fred. And let me see, the last flight to Miami went without a hitch. I've been really rushing trying to get my plane tail out the way. So apologies to Adam. Haven't touched our interview, but I'll get onto that. And tonight's Plain Tale was only finished about 2 hours ago. So thanks, Liz, for getting it up in time.
It's hot off the press.
It
And
is.
it's
Oh, and by
excellent.
the way,
I
I've
did
caught
get
a
a chance to
cold.
listen. Oh no.
Yeah, I'm losing my voice, but don't worry about that.
Oh no. Well, I hope it.
Well, Nick, just
hangs
come
in
over
there.
to my house for the penicillin.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be really nice. It only really happens if I do a lot of talking. So I shall try and shut up this show.
Oh, thank God.
Podcast perfect for soothing your weary voice.
By the time I landed in a Heathrow, I could hardly speak. So I was swilling water and trying to get the old vocal cords going. Haven't really felt bad, but just this, scratchy throat. Not nice.
Well, no more of that. I had that for about 2 weeks back in August and beginning of September. It's terrible.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
stay healthy, everybody. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's do our best. Yeah.
Well, last week we recorded on I think Thursday, and the next day I went to down to Daytona Beach. I mentioned that I was going to do that. I was going to join Peter Biondi as his guest. He's an alumnus of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and they had their homecoming weekend. And so I flew down on Friday and met up with Peter, and he gave me the grand tour, and I got to meet a lot of the faculty and staff of the university, and I think we pretty much saw every square foot of ERAU except the dorms. But I talk about that on this little piece of audio feedback that I'm going to play right now because I'm pushing the button right here. I'm here with Peter Biondi at the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Actually, we're here in front of the Daytona Beach International Airport, which is where Embry-Riddle is located. And I am just wrapping up a very quick trip down. Spent a good part of the day yesterday at the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University as a guest of Peter, who is an alumnus of Embry-Riddle, and he invited me to come down for their homecoming weekend. And let me tell you what, folks, I knew Embry-Riddle was a flying school, but I didn't realize it was so much more than that. And Peter took me around yesterday to, I think, every building he could we didn't see any of the dorms, and don't worry, I don't really want to go see the dorms. But anyway, he wore me out literally yesterday, walking around and showing me the university, and it's such a great place. Everybody that I saw there, all the students and faculty, everybody was very positive and very happy and very friendly, and very, very focused on aviation. It's just it reeks of aviation, which is a good thing. I know reek is not a good word to use, but it's passion. Yeah, the passion for aviation is just so evident there. And well, enough from me. Let's let you talk to Peter a little bit.
No, I want to say thank you for coming. DC, I'm so proud of the school. I had a great time when I was here, and I want to share that with other people. So it's hard to find people that really enjoy aviation like you. So I'm glad you enjoyed everything you saw, and people were really nice, showing us everything. And I really miss the university environment because, and it's sad. Well, I was telling you that some people lose that passion. So it's good if you can keep your passion for aviation. So that's something good about Embry-Riddle University. I can come here every year and keep the passion inside your heart. And something I like the most about here is that it's not only about flying, about pilots, but they have engineers, they have all kinds of meteorology professionals, air traffic. They gave us a tour on their facilities. It's just amazing. They're all really nice, and that's what I like about the school. It's a place where you can keep your passion in your heart and not just studying, but so the level of professionals are really good, and part of it is because it's people with passion that comes here. And that's one of the most important things, that never lose your passion for aviation.
It's an incredible facility as well. In fact, the grand opening for the new student center, the spaceship, I think they kind of call it, was yesterday. A big ceremony and everything. What a beautiful facility. It's just huge, and it's state of the art, and everything about it was just amazing. And again, all the students that I saw there yesterday, everybody was happy. I didn't see anybody, and everybody was studying, and well, not everybody, but a lot of people studying and very serious about what they're doing here.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. There was like a Friday evening, and the library was full with people studying. So you don't see that in a lot of universities. Here, people are studying, and I remember my first year here was 3 miles from the beach. I went there once in 1 year because most of my Saturdays and Sundays I was actually in school studying, and so it's a really school that you come to study and people take serious what they do, and that's what I enjoy the most. That to see this kind of dedication of professionals. You don't find many people you can actually share about aviation, so that's what I enjoy about coming here.
Well, I already knew that Embry-Riddle had quite a reputation for being one of the finest aeronautical universities and flying schools out there, but now I have a renewed appreciation of the school. And so thank you so much, Peter, for inviting me down to be your guest at homecoming. It was a blast. I really enjoyed it. Now I have to head back to Atlanta and back to reality. And here we are, back to reality. Had a great time. Thanks again, Peter, if you're listening, for hosting me and showing me around the campus. And as you mentioned, School of Meteorology. We have a school for mechanics and mechanical engineering and aeronautical engineering and so much more. Air traffic control. They're one of the schools that you can go to and get your degree in air traffic control. And
Air traffic control, don't they call that the kindergarten?
Yeah.
Careful now.
So.
We've got
That was Nick, by the
that do
way.
listen to this program. And, I'd like to say that does not reflect the opinion of.
There you go, Dr. Steph. You go ahead and be HR because that doesn't reflect our opinion. You're right. Wow.
Anyway, it was a grand time there, and he did actually wear me out. I wasn't used to standing up and walking for that period of time because I spend most of my life sitting, which is not a good thing, I know. But anyway,
Send him as that personal trainer again, huh?
Yeah, I
was going to ask, aren't you the bloke they have those little electric carts for in the airport to drive you from airplane to airplane?
Yes.
Not
Yeah,
for
I thought
me,
so.
though, Nick.
Well, you sure? Because
Okay, well, that's
It's a real confidence boost when your pilots show up on the carts.
Yeah.
Right.
No, not at all.
Have I ever mentioned what I'm going to do on my retirement flight?
Yeah, an electric cart driver.
No, I'm going to show
Dark
up
glasses.
with dark glasses and a walking stick on my retirement flight. I know
nobody's done that.
I mean, no offense to anybody, but of course, seeing a pilot walk up like that, I think would be quite humorous. But I would not do that until my retirement flight.
I think your actual HR might have something to say about it otherwise.
Yes.
You don't want to lose your retirement flight privileges, discounted fare privileges. So be careful.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Also, so that was Friday and Saturday, home on Sunday, and then back out again on Monday for a 4-day. And right now we're on day 3 of our 4-day trip. Yesterday, we were in at Dulles in Fairfax, Virginia, and met up with Robert Fairbairn, also known as Richard and Dick. And he picked me up from the hotel. We went over to a relatively new brewery in the area called Ocelot Brewing, and we did the big sample tray, not a tray, but
flight?
like a flight, yes, of 6 individual samplings, and then we continued to expand upon that after we decided which ones we wanted to have some more of, and some street tacos from a food truck vendor outside of the brewery there, and had a great time. So thanks, Richard, for taking me. Robert, I'm sorry, now I'm screwing up again. Robert, thanks for taking me over there. Had a great time, and look forward to doing it again sometime. No audio, so don't worry. No more audio meetup stuff on this show. And next week, I will be on another 4-day, Monday through Thursday. And let me take a quick look here, get this window up.
Hey, I'm off Monday, Jeff. I wish we could just swap a day and I could take that day and just get current.
Yeah, well, why not? I mean, if you can find somebody that will let you do that, I'd be happy to stay home and get paid for 4 days and only flying 3.
I'd even do it for free just so I get some bounces.
Let's see. I'll end up in Greenville, Spartanburg on the first day. The second day, I'll be up in Buffalo. Get to see the APG librarian, Tiffany. And so we should probably at this point say if anybody is up there in the Buffalo area and you want to meet Tiffany and I for late lunch, probably set it up for around 2 o'clock-ish, 1:30, 2 o'clock, something like that. Get in touch, and we'll probably put something on Slack regarding that.
And where are you going to go?
Well, last time I met up with Tiffany, we went over to Dinosaur Barbecue, and then a year or two before that, I met up with her in another place, and I think she mentioned that might be the place that we go for again. That's a few blocks south, I think, of where we stay. Is Tiffany with us in the chat room right now? No, I don't think she is. Anyway, whatever we decide or whatever she decides, we'll go ahead and publish. And
well, you said the magical word for me. That's all it took.
Well,
dinosaur.
Yeah. Can't get enough of that. And then
No.
on Wednesday I'll be in Indianapolis, and then home on Thursday. So that's my week ahead, and that's all I have to say about that. So, with that, anything else to do before we do the coffee fund? Nope.
I go check on the chicken. I'll see you in a minute.
Go check on your chicken. It's not loud enough. Oh, that's why.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the
APG community.
or something.
Coffee and tea. And
See, I can cut out my voice in that track. You'll never know. Okay, the Coffee Fund. That's Jeff Smith singing Java Jive. And the reason why he's singing it is because we have something here called the Coffee Fund, and you, listeners, can join us in the Coffee Fund cadre if you'd like to support us financially. And a couple different ways to do that. Last week, we had a new contributor via the Classic Fund via PayPal. His name, Daniel Alpino. Welcome, Daniel, to the Coffee Fund cadre. And the other way to do it is you can become a patron of the show via Patreon. And we have a new producer, Christian Carlson. So thank you, Christian, for joining up as a patron of the show. Again, if you want to learn how you can become supportive of our show in a financial way, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. And there you'll be given all the information. One of the perks, by the way, of that, although we haven't done one in a while, we need to do that. And it is something we call the APG crew log, and kind of a little bit of behind the scenes kind of information, extra stuff that you might be interested in. So again, thank you everybody for being Coffee Fund contributors. And now the rest of the story.
Is Jeff frozen?
He's frozen.
Uh-oh.
Oh. Can I just say, though, that the Java Jive has been following me around all week?
Oh, really? He's back.
There you are.
I was here the whole time.
No, you weren't.
No.
Definitely not.
I was here.
You're hearing us?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was hearing you. Yeah.
all we could hear was some static that sounded like.
Oh, that was me going.
You're just changing your teeth or something, were you?
And your picture was totally frozen.
Oh well, hotel Wi-Fi. What are you going to do?
I don't know.
Oh well.
Ghostbusters.
Sorry.
So you were saying, Steph, that the Java Jive
has been
has been following you around?
Yeah, I've seen it now in 2 different places unrelated to APG in the past 3 or 4 days. One was on a Facebook video that I Jeff knows the one I'm talking about.
Very, very enjoyable.
It was an old Jazzercise recording.
Oh,
video
yeah,
recording.
that's where I heard it.
And they
Yes,
were, they were doing some Jazzercise exercises to the Java Jive.
Talk about an early version of the spray on tan. What
Yeah,
color
it was
that
pretty.
lady?
It was all pretty horrible.
Yeah.
But then I heard it in another podcast I listened to. They were using it as an example. It was in Lexicon Valley. They were using it as an example of different ways you can say that you like something. So they love coffee,
neat.
love tea. Yeah.
I've been meaning to listen to that. I just haven't had time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to do anything
today.
Huh.
Anyway.
Yeah. I need to take a few days off, I think. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to read this piece of... I know, it's so bright in here. It's a piece of paper with some writing on it. Here we go. Maybe if I hold it at this angle. This is snail mail feedback. We have... if you want... Oh, by the way, somebody, I believe, Liz, maybe you can help me, was asking that if I had gotten their package in the APG PO box. And I have to tell you that I'm sorry, because I don't check it often enough, apparently. And when I finally did check it just a few days ago, I found a little slip of paper in there that said I had a parcel. And then I had until September 28th to get it.
Uh-oh. Well, hopefully it got returned to the sender so that they can
send it back to you.
Send it back to you.
Texas Charlie, I'm so sorry. So you probably by now have it back in your hands. If you'd like to, I'll tell you what, contact me directly, jeff@airlinepilotguy.com. I'll give you my home address, and that way we'll be sure that it gets to me, okay? All right. But anyway, we do have a P.O. box, and we have occasionally we get people that send letters and cards and that kind of thing. And this is from, well, let me read it. I think Ron, hang on, let me get to the second page here. No, Rick Mueller. Okay, hello APG. I'm Rick from North Bend, Washington. It says here, right here at the top. I should have read that. I'm not a pilot, but I am an av geek and a patron at Patreon, and enjoy your show very much. I've been listening to your episodes since the early 200s, and have just now started going back to the first episodes to try to catch up. This is my favorite paragraph. You all can be very funny. No, he didn't say you all are funny. You all can be very funny.
But we choose not to.
Captain Nick has a great sense of humor with his anti-Boeing lines. And you, Jeff, have a face for radio.
So he's saying that you look funny.
I like that. That's very deep use of words.
That's very funny, Rick.
Yes, that is.
I'm not going to read his feedback in it. All right.
Did he say a faith for radio or a face for radio?
Face.
Oh, I thought he said faith,
No.
which I thought would have been a really clever, sort of almost like a double entendre, but not quite.
Speaking of Faith, that Greg Faith guy, can you guys still hear me? Is my signal still?
Yeah.
He didn't make it to Embry-Riddle for his talk. He was down in South America or something, doing some kind of being an aviation expert or something. And it turns out that I wouldn't have caught his talk anyway, because when I was leaving my house, I realized a couple of miles down the road that I left my airline ID at home, which I needed to get down there. So I had to go back. And then I'm running late now, and I get to the train, and I get on the train, and I'm thinking, I'll probably just barely make it. And then the train would get to a station, and then the doors would close, and then the doors would open, the doors would close, and the doors would open, and go, oh, no. And then we'd start going, and then the same thing would happen a couple more times at different stations, and I'm thinking, this is not good. And then I heard the announcement that they were removing the train from service at Garnett Station. And I'm thinking, well, there goes. There's no way I can possibly make the flight that I was intending to make. And so I didn't get there as early as I should have. But turns out I didn't miss Greg Faith's talk at all because he wasn't there. So,
You mean they didn't ask you to stand up in his stead and give a little
No, can you
impromptu
believe that?
show or something?
Their loss.
Is that crazy or what?
Oh.
But Peter kept introducing me to people like I was some kind of a celebrity, and I'm going, you don't need to. I don't need to be introduced to the board of trustees, chairman. I don't need to be
Yes, you do.
introduced to the president of the university. Come on, I'm just some dude that flies airplanes and has a microphone and does a podcast. Anyway, so let me continue with this really funny stuff here. So we left off with Captain Jeff. You have a face for radio. That's certainly funny. He didn't think it's funny. That's what he put in. So I'm including a short. So I'm including a short 3-minute clip of old comedy from 1959 on a commercial pilot skit from a comedian named Shelley Berman. Nick and Jeff may be old enough to know who he was. I've heard of him. I cut this clip from about 12 minutes of laughs about airlines and stewardesses. I thought chances are you probably haven't heard it before, and certainly many other listeners haven't, so enjoy. It's dated, but it's still funny. I also included the 12-minute version for you, not sure about the copyrights on it. Both Apple and Amazon still sell his albums. Yeah, so they're probably copyrighted and probably something I can't really legally play. And I do still have the little mini SD card that he sent in this. It's funny, at the top of it, it says old school upload with attachments right here. I'm holding my hand. So the attachment was a little card that he sent in another little envelope. Anyway, I promise I will listen to it. Maybe we'll play a clip or so, or a little bit of that clip on the next show. Anyway, he has a question for us. So this is good feedback. You are rated or qualified for certain aircraft. What is your license to fly them? Which is your license to fly them? I wish I could read. Let me try that again. You are rated or qualified for certain aircraft, which is your license to fly them. But say you're on an aircraft that you've never been on before. Could you fly it? Let's say you're a passenger and the stewardesses, I didn't use that word, he did, drag the pilot and co-pilot down the aisle and then ask if there's anyone on board that can fly a plane. Nick, it's a Boeing for you. Jeff and Dana, an Airbus. Or let's just say it's a Russian plane. So Steph, you're on a Russian plane. You're all experienced with different multi-engine aircraft. Can you take over confidently as a single pilot? I'm sure the first thing you would do would be to make sure that the autopilot stays engaged. Could Dr. Steph do so? Take over, I mean, not make sure that the autopilot stays engaged. I guess what I'm asking is, can you instantly become a test pilot? Thanks for your answers. Thanks to you all for all that you do. Keep it up. Thank you. And he has some personal information about some of his memories from his flying with his dad, who flew for Northwest Orient for 40 years, and some of the traveling that they did, and some pictures of letters of authorization and some, tickets and passes and that kind of thing. So thank you, Rick. A lot of good stuff in here. I do appreciate that. So what do you think about Rick's question about, and I really thought about that. I'm thinking if I'm on an Airbus, I'm not sure. I think it might be kind of tough to operate an airplane that I've never used the automation on. And I might be tempted to just turn the automation off and hand fly it. But I know that could be a problem with an Airbus, right, Nick?
No, it'd be very easy for you, Jeff, because, and you're right, I think the automation is too easy to confuse because it does vary type to type, and it has little tricks and foibles that if you don't know about it, you can sometimes get yourself in a difficult situation. Much safer to take out the autopilot, take out the auto thrust, and just treat it like an airplane. It doesn't matter what airplane it is. You'll have a basic idea of how to fly it and keep it in the air if you need to. And on the Airbus, of course, if you do try to go too fast or too slow, or do anything silly, trying to roll it upside down, you know that the automation is going to gently intercede as you reach the envelope limits and prevent you from doing anything completely stupid. So you should be flying it with complete confidence, and you get the hang of it pretty damn quick. It shouldn't be too hard to work out where the wheels are. and how to put the flaps down, and they all land around the same speed. So, I guess if you aim for about 150, 160 knots over the piano keys, you're not going to go far wrong. I think any of us could probably handle most airplanes, so long as they haven't hidden the flap lever or hidden something or made something just too hard to locate. I think we'd probably make a reasonable fist of it. Oh, and so long as we didn't have to do an instrument landing of some kind. So that requires more automation than we might be familiar with on that particular type.
Well, how would you turn off the auto throttles on the Airbus, just in case I need to do this?
Is it
Well,
click?
Yeah, there's a little red disconnect button on the side, but quite honestly, if you just grab them and move them, then the auto thrust is going to go, whoa, I don't like that, I'm just going to disconnect. The same way if you grab the stick and just start moving it, the autopilot will click out. It'll click out with a warning as opposed to the normal disconnect, which is more subtle, but it'll always click out.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Excellent.
think, to answer his question, anyone could become a test pilot in those situations. But fortunately, it's one that would be exceptionally rare and unlikely to happen, for the sheer fact that there are 2 pilots in every cockpit of.
Yeah, I want to know why the cabin crew have dragged the pilots out of their seats and pulling them down the cabin. What are they?
They had to
Insult
fish.
them or something, or ask for an extra cup of tea?
They had the fish for dinner. And
I think it was a reference to Airplane the movie, maybe.
yes.
Okay, fair enough.
And so fortunately, any one of us or anyone in general is very unlikely to find themselves in that situation. But, if you're going to take a hypothetical like that and kind of take it to that extreme, yeah, anyone can become a test pilot in that situation. I think anyone placed in that, situation is going to perhaps surprise themselves with their ability to think rationally through the situation and figure out the best course of action. Like Nick said, what I would, if it were me, since I'm not as familiar with large aircraft, certainly have not flown large passenger jets, things like that, I would, if the automation was already engaged, I would leave that on for the moment, make sure that I was able to get in touch with someone, hopefully on the ground, who could give me some guidance as to what I'm looking at, where important switches, levers, things like that are, so that I know what's going on, point me in the direction of a airport with a large runway and with favorable weather conditions, and then go from there with what Nick said, basically.
All right.
When it comes to flying an aircraft, an airplane is an airplane. It's an airplane. So even though they all have different flying characteristics, they all have the same fundamental abilities. And that is, you keep on going forward, you're going to produce lift over the wings. You have flaps, you have landing gear, you have engines. It's lift, thrust, weight, and drag. It's the same type of scenario. So, it's just the difference in the automation, as Nick said. In the flight deck, I think on the Airbus, I would feel like if I was a private pilot, thinking back to those days, would I be able to go into a commercial airline and fly the airplane? Well, I would love to have that opportunity. If worse came to worse, and I always said way back when I was really young, when Easton went on strike, I said, well, I'll go fly the shuttle between Boston and New York. It can't be too bad. So, I was always dreaming. But anyways, I think it's everybody's hit it right on the head, and that is, an airplane's an airplane. They all fly very similar. It's not a helicopter compared to an airplane or a glider compared to a powered airplane. So it's same principles, and I think Doc Seth is absolutely 100% correct.
So I think it might be counterintuitive to a lot of people listening who are not professional pilots, that I think all of us would probably turn the automation off and hand fly it, because we go back to the fundamentals. We all know how to fly airplanes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Eventually, at least. Like I said, in my case, I'd probably want to take that opportunity for some familiarization, but after that, time provided.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, Rick, for your old school feedback with attachments.
Maybe Jeff will be kind enough to send the crew the attachments too, so even if we can't play it on air, we can.
Yeah, I'll turn it into something that I can send to you all. Okay.
Excellent.
Great.
Right. So now we'll talk about. So let me find my news page and news folder, and we'll dive right into it. And the first item we have, this is an interesting one, and I'm going to pause for a moment here because the sun is definitely
I was gonna say, can you
shining
see
right
anything?
in my face.
Yeah, you're starting to
No,
look
I
like a
can't see
zebra.
But while you're adjusting
I
that,
know.
I'm gonna use the little girl's room too. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
You sound so good whistling. We're getting close to that season, aren't we?
Christmasy. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Christmas.
well, we're getting close to it. I could do some Halloween tunes, but I don't think I
Oh,
want to do
really?
that quite yet.
Oh,
Oh,
do a dog.
doo 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 doo.
Hello.
Ah,
Okay,
there
now
he is.
it's dark.
Ah, we can see you.
Okay, let me see if I can. Do I need to adjust that?
Well, perhaps a little bit. You do look a little disembodied.
Okay.
Oh, too much.
Too much, yeah. Unfortunately, it's hard to get. I keep giving too much of those highlights. I guess I really don't know how to use this. Basically.
Professional.
Well, go back to the way you were. That was fine.
What, well, you can't see me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
I can always.
What is
You
it
have
you're
a face-
adjusting?
You have a
You're an
face
eye-
for radio.
Yes,
You're in
I'm-
eyeglasses, are you?
No, I'm using
Oh,
webcam
okay.
settings.
Uh-oh.
Speaking of eyeglasses, I passed with 2020 and 2025.
Excellent.
Excellent.
That's not too bad for a 48-year-old guy.
Wow, you're old.
I am an over-the-hill type of guy.
Yeah.
No cheaters, readers.
Who?
You?
Me?
Yeah, for up close for near vision.
2020 in distance, 2025 up close.
Oh,
I was at
25.
the opposite.
See,
2020 up.
I thought you were talking about each eye individually. Sorry, I missed
The
it.
next generation aren't going to need them for ages because they just have to pinch and spread to read the fine print on a plate.
Exactly. So you know what was funny about that?
What's that?
When I was in Japan last year, I was navigating my way across Tokyo without any real assistance. My friend Steph, who lived there, was kind of sending me instructions, and I was waiting for them at the train station, and they were delayed getting there because she was supposed to drive me to her house. And I said, "Well, it's getting dark. Can I see taxis. Can I take a taxi if you send me your address?" So she sends me what is her address, and it, no joke, was like 3 letters or 3 numbers or something. I was like, "That's it?" She's like, "Yeah, just show it to the taxi driver, and they'll know how to get to my house." I was like, "Okay."
Oh my god!
So I get down there, and it's this, older gentleman, super polite, and he's like looking at it, and I'm trying to show him, and he's like looking at it, and then he just goes, you can't see this, universal sign for zoom in. So
Yes,
it was pretty funny. He didn't speak any
Excellent.
English, I didn't speak any Japanese, and
I love it.
just fine.
All right. I think it's
Now you're red.
continue. I know. I don't want
You
to keep.
just look suntanned.
It's just a YouTube video. I don't care. All right. Air India plane slams into wall at 250 kilometers per hour. And I'm thinking, is that fast? I don't know.
I have
But
no idea.
continued to fly. And I did do the conversion. I think it's about 130 knots or something like that. Anyway, interesting incident over in Trichy, I think is the nickname for the airport that they departed from in a 737. It was an Air India Express flight, and they ended up first hitting with the belly of the aircraft the ILS antenna assembly at the end of the runway, and then shortly after that, the main gear tires hit a brick and stone wall on the perimeter of the airport, and the control tower advised the crew that this had occurred, and then later they confirmed it by finding the antenna assembly and wire mesh torn up and the wall badly damaged, and they said they also found pieces of their airplane. So finally, after heading out over the ocean, they were heading to Dubai. something like 3 or 4 hours later, I think finally by the time they landed at Mumbai, it was about 4 hours after the flight had departed and had this little incident. They made it safely to Mumbai. And I'm trying not to read directly from these news articles because I learned between last show and this show that as a podcaster, I'm not really supposed to do that. So I'm going to have to just kind of paraphrase everything. But there was one of these articles here that had some interesting information. I believe this was from, well, I don't know what this is from. Air India Express's aircraft scheduled to fly between Trichy and Dubai struck the instrument landing system's ILS localizer antenna and grazed the airport's perimeter wall before flying off. Graze, that would be
It's a mild word for it.
Mild way to say it. Let's see. Experts recalled, and never mind. We don't want to read that paragraph. On Friday's incident, air safety expert Captain Mohan Ranganathan told one of these news sources that the senior pilot's decision to continue his flight onwards is dubious. The decision led to the loss of 2 hours of crucial onboard voice recording data. And this system only keeps data for about 2 hours before it starts recording over it. So, that was a good point made, that they didn't have the conversation amongst the pilots regarding this incident. And they went over the ocean with a potentially badly damaged airplane. But the pilots, basically, when they were advised that this had occurred, said, well, we don't have any warning lights or anything telling us that anything's wrong, and we're pressurizing normally, so we're going to keep going. Which is, I agree with Captain, whatever his name is. How do you say that?
I don't know. I just.
Oh, okay. I think you probably do a better job than I can. Yeah, I agree with him. That was kind of a dubious, I think, poor judgment for, knowing that you hit something and then continued to press on instead of landing as soon as conditions permit and having the airplane examined. I don't know. What do y'all think?
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's not just, a questionable decision. It's a safety matter because, yeah, everything appears to be working fine, but you're going to take the plane for how long of a flight, not really knowing what kind of structural damage you might have caused, whether there's something that could become a much bigger problem before you're able to land safely. I think the prudent thing to do is, basically not fess up, but say, hey, something happened. We need to get it checked out. We need to land as soon as practical.
And how do you smack the ILS antenna assembly and hit a wall with the main gear and not feel that?
No idea.
No.
That's just not believable to me. I'm sorry.
Well, I think I saw different reports where there was something from the crew saying that, they didn't notice anything and everything seemed to be working fine. They were just advised by someone else. And then I think there were other reports saying, no, passengers definitely noticed that something had happened.
Oh, yeah. There's one. I'll quote from this this article here if I can find it.
Talk about the flight attendant.
No, it had something to do with scary rocking.
Oh, yeah. The passengers noticed that there was scary rocking after takeoff, and the cabin crew told them, no, that was perfectly normal.
Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Yeah,
I'll quote from this article. This is a different article. Ganesh Babu, the captain, had reportedly told officials that there was no problem in the plane, and all the cockpit equipment indicated to him that the plane was in good shape. The official said that the pilot was supposed to take off at a particular point on the 8,169-foot runway, but he could have crossed that point before taking off, leading to the tire brushing the wall. Not sure what they mean by that. When the passengers asked about the scary rocking experienced by them, they were reportedly told by the crew that was common.
So, an 8,169 foot, I'm assuming it doesn't actually give the measurement, whether it's feet, but that'd be way too long for meters. So I'm assuming feet runway should be plenty long enough for a 737 to take off from.
Yeah, wasn't it hit 1,000 feet beyond the end of the runway?
Well, I mean, if you think about where a typical
Yeah,
ILS
300
assembly
meters.
is, and then
Yeah.
a perimeter wall beyond that, and they don't appear to be. I mean, there's a couple pictures, and sometimes it's hard to get a sense of scale, but they're not very tall structures. Let's just say that. So this aircraft was not far off the ground, if at all, when it.
Oh no, he was trundling through the grass, I
Yeah,
suspect.
exactly.
Yeah.
I also like that one of these articles just posted a picture of a 747.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah, that's good.
737.
I spotted that as well.
A typical, somebody give me a picture of an Air India airplane. Not even an Air India Express, which I think is probably part of Air India, but a big giant 747.
Similar.
Yeah, it's a Boeing. You know, at least they got that right.
Yeah. Close.
So,
Yeah, I must admit, I'm just going to make one comment. I don't think that we as captains should be concerned about landing an aircraft because we're worried the cockpit voice recorder tape is going to run out. But other than that, I happen to agree with everything that assessment said or quoted. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that they were worried so much about it running out. I think they were thinking that may have been part of their thought process as to why they did not land.
Oh, really? Well, it's easier just to pull the
As an
circuit breaker and
implication
erase it, quite
yeah.
honestly, if you really want to do that.
But yeah, but then that implies that intent, that you intended to not have the voice recorder available for an investigation.
No, I suspect it's more the frustration of the accident and analyzer that he didn't have that piece of data available. So he was expressing frustration at that. So me as a captain, it's not even going to enter my thought process as to whether there's going to be that there or not and available. But then other than that, if you smack something, I mean, for heaven's sake, we've got a tail scrape warning indicator on our aircraft, and it can be just the fact that you have touched that little device at the back of the aircraft on the ground and done no other damage. But if that light comes on, there's no way in a million years I would consider heading off on a route now and climbing up to altitude. I would prepare my logbook for inspection by the accident investigation board whilst I land the airplane back on. So I just plowing through the overshoot and taking out the aerials and smacking a brick wall. No, I agree with you guys. There's no way these chaps didn't realize what they'd done, but they were just hoping to get it, that they had got away with it. They must have known they exceeded their normal takeoff length.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wait, you said you have a tail strike warning light?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a novel idea. Okay. Something we don't have in our airplane for sure.
Okay.
It would just be by feel or by actual visual inspection. Somebody wrote in, I think, to us, regarding why or how the airplane could have had such a long takeoff roll.
Well, let's hold that thought, because
Okay.
that'll be in our feedback section. Because
Then I won't say anything more than that on that. But my thought here is where the damage occurred is pretty scary to me. It happened on right where the main gear is. So this means he's not in a very nose-high pitch attitude, right? So he's not trying to climb away from anything at this point. And, you mentioned it, Nick, and you're talking about the, tail skid indicator. The only damage is right underneath, as far as I see, is right underneath where the main landing gear is, right between, where they would retract. So, yeah, he would not have any indication of any damage. And I agree with everybody, me as a new captain, if somebody called me and said, hey, we have evidence of damage at the airport and it's from your airplane, I'm going to the nearest suitable airport. I'm not going to fly for another 3 hours. Flying back to where they go? Bombay? Is that where they went?
Yeah, Mumbai.
Yeah.
Mumbai, Bombay. I'm not doing that. I'm going to the nearest suitable airport, putting the aircraft down on the ground, because I don't know exactly what the extent of the damage is. So
they did have some pictures in there, and there was a big hole in I believe it was a left horizontal stabilizer near the root of.
Yeah, that was just some debris flying up.
Yeah,
So-
kind of a
but it's still
puncture.
damage.
Yeah, there's definitely damage there, but
Yeah.
what's really telling to me is that the damage is underneath the belly of the airplane midsection. I mean, the engines just cleared that, luckily, right?
Yeah, I don't know how the engines.
Yeah, I don't know how.
didn't
I don't know
hit
how
all.
they didn't get hit, because where the damage is really telling me that the nose is in a fairly low position, not in a high takeoff position. So I
Mhm.
don't know what's going on there. It's kind of fishy.
Yeah. Well, obviously they're going to have the flight data recorder. That was not overwritten. And
Can I just ask the question though? Do you guys
we
have
all
any?
can.
Oh, sorry, we had a bit of a lag there, Jeff.
Mhm.
Can I just ask the question? Do you guys have any great exception to having a cockpit voice recorder that runs for 24 hours?
I don't know why there would be.
I think 30. I think a 30-minute loop is too short, to be honest.
Well,
I wouldn't. I wouldn't be
Other
opposed.
modern recorders now are 2 hours.
Yeah, but my feeling is we've gone way past the days of worrying about our management pulling the audio tapes from an aircraft and listening to private discussions of the pilot about, say, a pay negotiation or something, which was always the concern that our casual conversations could be pulled by the company. We have data protection now that is so well enforced that that's not going to happen anymore. And I personally think that it is vital, really, that added to all the other data we gather on the aircraft, we also gather data on what's happening on the flight deck, so that just so this kind of accident can be properly investigated.
So would you go a step further and say we should have
Video as well?
No.
Yes, you should have video, you should have audio, you should have everything. If we're conducting our jobs properly, then we have nothing to be concerned about.
I don't mind the audio, and I support a longer loop because there are newer situations that are coming about, especially. I'm not even going to talk about it on the air, but that I'm more concerned about. But I wouldn't mind having a much longer audio loop, 6, maybe 8, 12, 24 hours. That's fine. I have nothing to hide. I do my job, as advertised, as the company wants me to do my job. So, I mean, even with video recorder, I wouldn't have necessarily an issue with that. Other than that, I think that kind of steps over the line. Although my truck accident, I wish I had a video recorder, although it turned out okay. But anyways, being that said, I personally be opposed to video recorders.
I can see both sides of the argument for that, but I think it's inevitable that eventually we'll probably have to live with that.
Yeah, and we're currently protected from random accusations being made concerning the data that comes off all the normal flight parameters that are recorded, because any flight where someone's done something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, it is de-identified before the company flight safety people are given that by a guardian in our airline, for example. And most airlines have a very similar sort of system. In other words, you are not personally going to be identified. Whatever data, whether it be voice or video, you're eventually going to go to the point where, well, okay, we just need to be able to see what's happening on the flight deck to try and work out what's going on, because these incidents need to be properly picked up. We laugh now when we see what little data there was available to early aircraft accident investigators, and say, well, if only they'd had a proper flight recorder. Now we've got those, and we've got lots of other things we could use to really accurately work out what went wrong. I just find it ridiculous we don't employ them.
Well, in Fokker is what you're talking about. Fokker is far more advanced than the newer equipment, very much like what you're flying. And my buddy that flies for Spirit, he got a phone call directly from flight safety because they had him doing 180 knots at 1,000 feet with his flaps at 2, I think it was, on his 320 or 321, whatever it was. But yeah, I mean, I can see where certain companies may have it de-identified or there's protections, but not all companies have that. And he's already having to dance through a lot of hoops because of Fokker data and he's on the air safety committee, which is the irony in the whole thing. So I don't know how it is at
he
Acme.
might be personally embarrassed about that, but if he's got a good reason for being unstabilized at that point, then he just says okay. And if he was unstabilized and persisted with the approach, he's got to put his hands up and go, I made a mistake. But that's the whole point of the culture of our aviation industry, is that we allow people to make mistakes and we don't give them a punishment as a result. We allow them to put their hands up and go, yes, I made a mistake, and then they're allowed to be retrained and move on. That's all the part of our airline and open reporting culture, surely.
Well, and the biggest advantage of FOQA, honestly, is that they gather all the data, they see trends, and then they're able to mitigate those through training and in activities that will help to enforce positive learning curves and help to make the airline or the airplane or whoever's operating it a much safer operation if they choose to do so, as we do at Acme.
Yeah. Okay.
So some additional information, which was shared by Armando in the chat room. He shared a link to the Google Maps of this airport, so you can kind of see where the localizer antenna and wall are in relation to the runway. And best we can tell, it looks like they're about 300 meters from the threshold. So he went 300 meters beyond the end of the runway and was still not high enough in altitude to avoid hitting that wall and localizer.
Midpoint on the airplane.
Yeah.
That's even scarier.
Quite scary. And then just beyond that, I think there's, town and houses and things. So fortunate it wasn't.
But I had no warning lights, so it's okay. What's the big deal?
It's fine.
I'd be very interested to know if the runway end identifier lights were damaged as well, because this really points to that the aircraft did not rotate until just before the antenna in the wall.
Yeah, either way,
because
it's
the
crazy.
damage would be more towards the tail of the airplane, I would imagine, if they're trying to climb away. That's what this damage is telling me, and that's what's scary.
Well, I think we're going to learn more as the investigation continues, as the stomach turns. Why don't we go ahead and just address what's the daytime soap opera
As
the world turns. There we go.
I was on today.
Think of that.
I was like,
So I thought, as the stomach turns.
that's the GI version of the show.
So let's go ahead and, since we're still on this incident, why don't we go ahead and just address a piece of feedback regarding this? Since we're
Sure. Which number is it?
number one.
Oh, excellent.
Brett says, Captains Jeff, Nick, Dana, and Dr. Steph, looks to be an interesting accident. Glad only egos and careers were only harmed in this accident, and sadly, lots of airframe damage. How does the captain of the flight allow an airplane to take off this low? Is it a bad flap setting or density altitude? Surely it isn't overloaded. It may be, and don't call me Shirley. I guess we will learn if and when the findings are published. I know you all have been over the power settings and takeoff deratings on the show multiple times. Do you think that this could have been the issue? Yeah, it could have been, actually. Maybe not selecting the correct performance numbers and settings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe the people that loaded the airplane gave them bad data on how much they really weighed.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly, but I think Dana's feeling that he wasn't in a sort of rotated position, which he would have done when he got to the right speed. If he was overweight, he'd have just sat there on the ground until he hit the aerials, but it would have struck all the way down the fuselage, not just in the center point. So I'm sort of seeing where Dana's going with that and thinking, well, he wasn't in a nose-high position when he hit those aerials. He was fairly flat, so that may indicate that he wasn't overloaded. I'm tending towards the wrong flap setting myself.
Yeah, and let's just be fair with this. As we're going down the runway, we hit our V1 and rotate speed, right? V1 is our decision speed. We don't know where he hit that V1 speed, but he may have hit that V1 speed and the acceleration wasn't there. The aircraft wasn't flying off the runway. Flaps weren't set properly. That type of scenario, what you're mentioning, Nick, and that's exactly what I'm thinking, is that they just couldn't get the aircraft off the ground.
Yeah, too low a power setting,
Yep.
something like that.
Something
Yep.
like that. So everything that Brett has brought up, I think, is absolutely accurate. Could be any of those.
Now, you guys, do you time yourselves to 80 knots when you make that call?
No.
No.
No, we don't have an SOP, but I always glance down at my clock and make sure that I'm at under 30 seconds to 100 knots. Now, it would be a brave man that would reject takeoff just based on that data. I'm 31 seconds at 100 knots, so I'm going to reject my takeoff with no other indications. But it would certainly make me look around and double check everything. And if necessary, I would just slip the throttles up to toga just to make sure that there wasn't a problem with the performance and I was giving myself the best chance. So for me, it's a wake up call if I'm not at 100 knots by 30 seconds, and which is, that's pretty slow if you've got to that point. You might have a dragging brake and hadn't realized or something,
Just another piece of situational awareness, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
That's pretty amazing to me. You guys you use 80 knots, and then after that, there's no V1?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay.
We use, for a start, we have a 100 knot call, not an 80 knot call. And I time myself to 100 knots.
Gotcha.
And that's just a personal thing. So I just check my acceleration rate to 100 knots. No, we have the standard V1 calls just as everyone else. So that's normal. I just make sure that up to 100 knots I have accelerated well enough to reach it in 30 seconds. Otherwise, I'm starting to look around the aircraft to make sure everything's in the right place and everything's good.
Okay, makes sense.
Very good. Well, I think we have beaten the proverbial dead horse, right? Or
Yeah.
or whatever.
But
Poor horse.
wow, it's just one of those stories that you look at and you go, "What?
Very
How?
true, Liz.
Why?"
Yeah, there's been surprisingly high number of people who put the wrong performance figures in, though, and got away with it. Now, this bloke didn't, for example.
They thought they might have.
Yes.
Just keep going. No one will notice. It'll buff out. That's fine.
Nothing to see here.
If you haven't seen the pictures that we're referencing of the damage to this aircraft, you should actually check it out because it's not subtle.
And I love the company's kind of defense of the whole thing. Well, I mean, it was just the outer part, the surface of the skin and the honeycomb, but not the actual pressure vessel. So it was okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like that makes it all right.
Yeah, and like that's not going to be excessive drag and excess fuel burned and all that kind of stuff.
and smashed cables and hydraulic lines and all the other things that could have gone wrong.
Yeah, sorry, that doesn't fly.
Mere inches.
No pun intended.
Yeah,
inches away, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. All right, letter B, American Airlines. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. Mm-hmm. An American Airlines flight, Flight 263, declared a medical emergency. They were in flight from Dallas to Beijing, China, and they had a medical emergency and decided to divert to Edmonton. And let's see, which one of those? Alberta? No, yeah, Alberta. Isn't that the
Alberta? That's correct.
Canada. And then when they were coming into Edmonton for their divert, they started configuring the airplane and had a problem with their slats and flaps, and realized that they couldn't land at Edmonton because they would rather land at an airport that had longer runways, which is what we would all do. And so then they diverted from their first divert airport to their second, which was Calgary. And so not sure exactly how long it took them to do all this. They had to burn, or they dumped fuel, I think a couple different times to get the airplane down to a safe landing weight. And everybody walked away unscathed, but I'm not sure about the person that had the medical emergency, though.
Yeah, I don't think there's any information in the, it was a cardiac medical emergency, but I don't know the outcome. So hopefully it was a good outcome.
Yeah, I hope so too. It was a 787-8 twin jet Dreamliner, according to FlightAware.
What's that look like?
Looks like a 747.
Yeah.
No,
if you're a journalist, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like an airplane. Engines and a big hump on top.
Yep, exactly.
Anyway,
that's what I'm making fun of.
Yeah. So we have that.
It wasn't that guy's day, was it?
No,
He
not at
must
all.
have.
Sounds
he
like
must have
a-
thought this sounds like a command assessment simulator.
That's what I was going to say. Having
Mhm.
flashbacks to being in the simulator. It's like,
Yep.
well, you've got this medical emergency. Oh, but now you can't land because you have problems with your
Right.
flaps.
Multiple.
Multiple.
emergencies.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
that's where that training, hey.
Yep.
not
Exactly
expected
right.
time, but
But
gives
you have
the-
to kind of work out what the probability of this happening was. I mean, if you'd done a calculation, you'd have said to yourself, double emergencies. No, we don't cater for those because they never happen.
Well, they do sometimes.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the proof in the pudding.
Never say never.
And by the way, excellent decision. Why jeopardize over 200 passengers for one passenger if you have a mechanical issue and choose the longer runway? Kudos to him for making that decision.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, they landed pretty fast, didn't they?
I
Does it
Do
have
we
the
have
speed
that
in there?
information?
I have read it on a different.
What do they say?
Yeah, I haven't got the actual figure, but I seem to remember it was like almost a flapless landing or something close, and they were down at about 180 knots. So
yep,
I
that's
mean,
pretty quick.
yeah, that
14,000
was
foot
pretty quick.
long runway in Calgary, I think.
Yep,
Mm.
14.
Yes. Now, the runway wasn't short at Edmonton, 11,000 feet, but when you are in a situation where you're having to fly that fast because you don't have the flaps and the slats to help you with reshaping your wing, you
Yeah,
definitely want as much runway as you can get.
If you have the opportunity for more length of the runway, definitely take it.
Yep. Longer is better, they say. Okay.
Do they?
Letter
Yeah,
C.
She says
And
anyway.
faster isn't better.
Yes. Too much or a lot more energy that you have to dissipate.
But the width
let's-
of the runway is important too, so you have don't have directional control issues.
Steady the buff. Steady.
Okay. That's enough. Calm down, everyone.
Moving on.
HR, please.
Moving on.
HR,
Moving on.
please step
Moving
in.
on. I believe number letter C.
Letter C.
Uh,
This is wow. This one could have really gone horribly wrong.
Well, I think
mean,
it did actually.
It did, but it could have been even worse. Nobody got hurt. But a Belgian Air Force mechanic who was working on an F-16 in a hangar, somehow, maybe he was working on
Nick,
this.
how does that remind you of me somehow?
Really? I'm not quite sure why.
I have
Why?
no idea why. Accidentally opens fire?
huh?
Why does that remind you of you? Why do you often?
Didn't you just say it reminds me of me?
No.
That's why I thought I heard you say. I'm sorry. Must be that British accent.
Starting over.
Jeff, just mute him again, will you?
I'm gone. See ya.
So
Go
here,
check on the soup.
let's do item C. A Belgian Air Force mechanic accidentally opened fire on and destroyed an F-16 fighter jet while servicing another warplane. He was in a hangar working on, I think it was a 20 millimeter cannon. I don't recall. I think I was reading that in one of the articles referring to this incident.
Yeah, it'll be the standard 20 millimeter, 100 rounds a second
Holy
Gatling gun that they have. That same as the Eagle, same as the F-18. It's a fantastic weapon, but geez, it fires fast.
Well, somehow this mechanic,
As she
and
said.
I'm wondering if he was working on that system, because how would you accidentally? I mean, don't you have to arm the gun, and aren't there certain things you have to do to have access to the trigger on the gun?
Well, if it's in a hangar, for heaven's sake, what was it being loaded in a hangar? The only time you load it is usually on the flight line and then in a safe direction. You always got safe headings for armed aircraft, just in case something cooks off accidentally. So why it's in a hangar armed, I don't know. And then there are usually, if you're going to work on a weapon, even if it's not armed, you're usually going to put interlocks in there to prevent it. There's usually a mechanical interlock and an electrical interlock when the engineers are working on it, because of course things they can do can sometimes override the electrics that were in the cockpit that allow the weapon to fire. So I'm just trying to work out why they'd have an armed aircraft. Now, yeah, I'm gonna guess here. They had the aircraft armed, forgot it was armed, put it in the hangar, and the bloke was sitting in the cockpit, probably just finishing the tow, perhaps sitting in the cockpit, and he's going, "Oh, I wonder what happens if I pull this."
Play
Oops.
fighter pilot
Oops.
for a moment.
Exactly right. But
See, I was thinking actually probably a little more benign situation where you're just turning around to climb out of the cockpit and accidentally,
oh, that's what I'll tell everybody.
Uh-huh.
I accidentally
Give the
kick
guy
the
the benefit.
master arm on, and then I
Yeah.
accidentally need the trigger. But no. I mean, no, seriously, there's so many safety precautions that should have prevented this happening. There has to be a major breakdown in the procedures for this to occur.
Yeah. Well, it destroyed the F-16. I guess took direct fire from, and another F-16 was next to it. I think also sustained a little bit of damage, but I think they were able to salvage that one. If you look at the photos that we'll include in the show notes, you'll see the burnt out carcass of the F-16 that got nailed by the accidental fire, the friendly fire.
I'm just wondering, how many rounds went off, because I don't see much peripheral damage. I mean, there's a big gap in the hedge. Do they cut the hedge down as well?
I don't know.
I'm only joking. It's just that normally, you'd expect to see the odd hole in the hangar behind, or something. But
I guess it would only take one of those bullets to hit the fuel tank, right?
yeah, and particularly if it's an incendiary. But it depends what they had on board, or a high explosive. That would have made a big mess very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that that mechanic is going to have some splaining to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's stay on the subject of military aircraft. The worldwide F-35 fleet was grounded temporarily for inspections related to that crash. Remember, we were talking about the crash somewhere off of the
It was in
coast.
Beaufort, South
Beaufort.
Carolina.
There you go. The state in which Steph resides.
Currently.
And,
yes.
And so we were wondering, we talked about it on the show. Nobody knew exactly what happened there, but the pilot did eject safely, I'm pretty sure. And we were wondering if this was the first accident and crash of an F-35, and indeed it was. And this several of these articles mentioned that. And apparently it had something to do with a engine fuel tube had some problems, and so they immediately grounded the fleet to inspect the airplanes or inspect the fuel tubes on the
Okay,
airplanes.
guys, what's a fuel tube? I mean, I know what a fuel pipe is, but what's a fuel tube?
It's very much like a fuel pipe.
Have you ever heard it called that before?
No, not really.
Fuel
No, I'm
line,
just wondering if
maybe? Fuel line?
Yeah, fuel line, fuel
I've heard
pipe.
fuel lines, yeah. I never heard
Yeah.
of a fuel tube, but apparently whoever's writing this article likes that term.
Did they
Yeah.
include a picture of a 747 for the F-35?
The fuel tube of a 747.
Yeah.
It turns out that most of the F-35s now have returned to flying status. They've done their inspections, and
on the rest of them, they're trying to find the fuel tubes. They can only find pipes.
that might be the problem. Okay, so we'll see if there's anything else
to be fair, this sort of thing is not uncommon in an aircraft that's just been introduced in service. There are usually a lot of niggles that you don't reveal in test flying that only come in on the production aircraft. And yeah, these things happen.
So maybe it was a fuel niggle.
Could have been.
No, I don't know. Okay. And again, still staying in the military realm, this next news item, Hurricane Michael, you mentioned it earlier in the show, Nick. The storm, basically, Tyndall Air Force Base was like the epicenter of this terrible hurricane that made landfall in the panhandle of Florida. And Tyndall Air Force Base is also the home to one of the units that have the F-22s, and a number of them had been left behind in hangars, and I think probably because they weren't in airworthy condition to fly. They were undergoing maintenance, etc. And apparently as many as 4 of the F-22s were destroyed, which is not a good thing. at
Yeah.
all.
That's
These things are not
expensive.
cheap.
Pricey airplanes.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why they didn't fly them out. Was it probably due to mechanical issue? I mean, who knows? That's the only thing I can think of. It's the aircraft was not what.
Yeah.
I think
I was just
quite
reacting
right,
to you the way you were reacting. It's like you're rubbing your head and so forth. So that's why I kind of stopped there. But yeah, no, I mean, one has to wonder why they did not fly those aircraft out. And the only thing I can come up with is that they weren't safe or mechanically fit to fly.
We agree.
Yeah. I mean, if they could have got them airborne in any form or manner, without radars, without canopies, in almost any, so long as it's basically flyable, VFR, you could have got them out in time to get ahead of the storm. But once that storm, it deepened and became more powerful pretty quickly. They wouldn't have got that many days' notice that it was going to be of the strength it is. Now, the thing that I was surprised at, and this is all kind of down to Air Force budgets, I suspect, is that they didn't have hurricane-proof safe havens on the airfield. I mean, most NATO bases that I go to have hardened aircraft shelters that would have withstood this hurricane without any problem, could have hidden them in those. But Tyndall didn't seem to have those facilities. And for the price of one of these jets, you could have put up a bunch of hardened aircraft shelters.
Interestingly, back in 1992, there was another hurricane that hit the base, Hurricane Andrew, and it destroyed 80% of the base at that time as well. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was was that the same? That was a different base because that was in South Florida.
Yeah, but I mean,
Homestead Air Force Base. So, sorry.
The
So
principle stands, though, doesn't it, Steph? Having learned the lesson with one base, you'd have thought, well, Tyndall's pretty much in a vulnerable area as well. Let's put some precaution there so that we can hide our valuable jets away if we need to.
yeah, but going back to what, excuse me, what you were saying earlier, this storm did come up fairly quickly, and most of the predictions for the vast majority of the duration of the storm showed it, staying around Category 2 strength, which is a strong hurricane, certainly. But it was basically the final 12 to 24 hours before it made landfall, where it basically intensified pretty rapidly and was just short of a Category 5 hurricane. So I think, given those time constraints, and if it was, aircraft that were not airworthy in the first place, that's not a lot of time to make arrangements. But like you said, why not take the precaution in the first place? But
yeah, I mean, military units are always ready for a snap drill anyway. I mean, the squadron should be able to generate the maximum number of serviceable aircraft in a very short time. So, I mean, that's part of the whole raison d'etre of a military unit, is being able to respond quickly. They're well practiced at it. So they should have had sufficient time to get what they could airborne. In whatever means, crippled with the gear stuck down or the flaps stuck, no, whatever state it was, they could have got it a few hundred miles away, which would have saved them.
Well, they received a lot of criticism, the upper brass of the Air Force, regarding what you're just talking about there, Captain Nick. And an interesting article, I'll put a link to it in the show notes for this item in the news, by Tyler Rogaway from the War Zone, part of the drive.com. The title of the article is "Setting the Record Straight on Why Fighter Jets Can't All Simply Fly Away to Escape Storms." And one of the things they mention is that readiness rate that you just mentioned, Nick. And they said that they've been struggling with that with the latest generation of fighters. They have a horrible readiness rate. And but anyway, it was an interesting article. I think you would be interested in
it. I did actually read it. Okay. And I was looking at the sort of 50% readiness rates for the F-22 compared with 70%, say, for an F-15.
Or some of the legacy generation.
Yeah. But we're not talking about readiness to go to war. We're talking about just getting airborne. Yeah. So, even if you fly it without a canopy, you can probably, safely do that on some aircraft. There's all sorts of rules. You could say, well, this aircraft's not fit to go to war, but it's fit just to move 200 miles and land it again. Gear stuck down it, all sorts of things. So there is that element. The same thing that we would apply in a survival scramble. If we get in the old days of the Cold War, if we got the 4-minute warning, there'd be a survival scramble, and any aircraft that could fly in any form or manner was launched within the 4 minutes so that it would survive the nuclear attack, and then it would be landed somewhere else or brought back, and if the base had survived, etc. So that principle still exists. I just happen to think that, yes, obviously there's some aircraft that they just physically can't get up, or may not even have engines in it or whatever. So in which case you've got to have a little safe haven on the airfield there for those that are obviously left on the ground.
The other thing that they're talking about is whether they're even going to consider rebuilding the base at all. And just
Whoa, that would be a hell of a hole in, in the USAF's inventory of bases. That Tyndall is an important base.
It is, yeah. I think it's a $3.4 billion asset or something like that. So it's
yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a
relocating all
lot.
those training units and everything. The aggressors are there, aren't they?
Yep.
All sorts of units. No, it was a great base. I mean, it's so sad to see it so badly damaged. But no, I can't see the Air Force abandoning it, surely.
Well, that was just one of the points mentioned in the article. Who knows?
Yeah,
where
interesting.
that's coming from.
Interesting.
Okay, enough of that military stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk
Right.
about general aviation. The suburban Atlanta area. Is somebody trying to get my attention?
Oh no,
Not
we were
too-
just waiting for you to come back.
Oh, am
I'm
I?
not sure how much
Am
of
I
that you
gone
read.
again?
Yeah, you were disappeared temporarily.
Oh, I love this. This
Hotel
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's great. And actually, when I did the test, it was like 18, 19 down and 30 to 35 up.
Really?
So the
It's that
actress to the bishop.
intermittent,
hmm
drops in the bandwidth.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. All right.
I think it's the big shine off your forehead right about now.
That might be. Well, I'm doing my best, but the sun keeps moving from my left to right, and I'm running out of drape to cover it. So we'll just have to deal with it. I can turn my camera off, I guess, if it's a distraction. A single engine plane crashed at Gwinnett County Airport, which is a suburb of Atlanta on the northeast side. It was a 172 with a instructor and student, and they were doing touch and go practice maneuvers, and it crashed somehow. There's really not a lot of information in this article. It
Well,
crashed.
it made a mess of the 172. It's definitely, I mean,
Yeah.
it said considered a complete loss. The pictures, yeah, that's not an airplane anymore. It's a pancake.
It does look like a pancake.
That was a really hard touch
Yes.
Yeah.
definitely.
and no go.
Right.
Is it right on the piano keys?
Yep.
I mean,
I don't know if that was the departure
Yeah.
end or the, yeah, I don't know which end they were.
I'm just assuming that that was the departure end, not the approach end.
I
But I don't know.
can't tell from what's going on there. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, not a lot of meat in this story. It's an airport I've
No.
been to, flown to. I actually met dispatcher Mike there once. We had
I used to do a lot of flying out of Briscoe.
and had lunch or dinner or something at the little restaurant on the field, which was a
Mhm.
interesting, quirky place, I will say.
no, they both got out okay, didn't they?
Yes.
Yes, it did.
So good news
Yeah.
for the pilots on board.
And by the way, Briscoe is Gwinnett County. Because I did say Briscoe. I'm sorry.
No, that's right. We knew what you were talking about.
Lawrence.
I know you knew, but I don't know if the listeners know. When I say Briscoe,
They do now.
They
was
do
it
now.
Kilo
That's quick.
Lima Zulu uniform?
Kilo Lima Zulu
Lima,
uniform
Zulu,
is correct.
okay.
Yes. I think about that for a second. Yes. That would be correct.
Right. Well, if we find out any more information about it, we'll certainly mention it. Maybe. Item G, Lockheed Constellation trucked to TWA Hotel to serve as a bar. So I guess, they're doing that big the TWA terminal, and they're turning it into a hotel
Mhm.
and at John F. Kennedy International. And apparently they found this rare Lockheed Constellation L1649A Starliner somewhere that had been sitting there for like 30 some odd years, somewhere up in Maine at the Auburn Lewiston Airport. And they ended up trucking it down to New York City. This man named Simon Graham, who grew up in the area and remembers driving by the Connie as a kid, was asked to help restore the airplane, especially the interior, because they wanted to really do it up for this fancy bar. And he owns a local custom upholstery business. Was thrilled when he was asked to restore the airplane's 744 square foot interior. I'll quote from the article here. I thought it was kind of cute. All of a sudden, here was somebody telling me it was going to be a fancy bar at JFK, Graham recalls. They said, "Can you make it look like 1958?" And I said, "Hell yeah."
Glad that he's enthusiastic about it.
Love
Love it.
It's like, wait, you're paying me a lot of money to do this, hopefully?
Yeah.
Sure, I can
Heck yeah.
deliver whatever. Heck yeah.
Graham installed a new subfloor in the plane's cabin, also in outfitting the interior walls with imitation leather. Imitation leather? Simon, come on.
Well, it's going to have cocktails thrown all over
That's
it.
true. You really don't want to ruin the nice Italian leather that he did
Yeah.
use for the seats.
He also used Italian leather to reupholster seats in the cabin and on the flight deck. He says, "This is a big deal. There are thousands of people watching this project. So far, it's a crowning moment in my career." Unquote. Okay, so I guess
I'm
they're going.
excited to actually see the hotel when it opens and actually see the Connie as a bar in action.
Me too. We'll have to maybe have some kind of an APG meetup at the bar
Yes.
in Kennedy. That'd be
Do we
fun.
know the
That
time
would be
frame on when
fantastic.
this is supposed to open? Is it
Um,
getting close? I feel like listener Dave Abbey has information on it. That
Dave Abbey, come on, where are you, man? Oh, he doesn't watch the show live. Plans call for the air
I'm sorry,
next
go ahead.
spring. It says at the very end of the
okay,
article.
okay.
Next spring is when they're expecting it to open up.
I
was
can't
gonna
wait
say,
to have a
I've-
cocktail in this place.
Me too.
And
Yes,
sitting in the cockpit, no less.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be a
was
perfect
thinking-
place to have a cocktail.
I
Legally.
think
Get some photographic evidence.
next time I do a JFK next year. I'll be able to do one next year. I'll have a cocktail on the way to work. That'd be nice.
Just to ease the nerves.
You know, I just realized that there was a second article. Thank you, Liz, in here, and some interesting information about this particular airframe. It has a storied past, including a stint in the '60s as an Alaska bush plane, shuttling supplies to Prudhoe Bay, and it also in the '80s it served marijuana dealers as a drop plane in South America.
I like the Bush idea
Wow.
better.
Yeah.
And I just spotted that Kelly Johnson designed the Super Constellation. I never knew that.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a good old Lockheed.
He's a cool man.
Yep.
Mm.
Is he still
And
alive?
am I the only one that's formatted on one?
What?
I'm sure.
Formatted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Fornicated.
formatted a
No, formatted.
I formatted my Phantom on one once.
What's that?
It was a USAF one out of Iceland, which was the USAF's AEW aircraft before the AWACS came along. And it was flying out of Iceland just before they decommissioned them and got rid of them. And we did an intercept on them. And first time I've ever seen a lady first officer, because I was told to, or it would have been co-pilot in those days. I was asked if I could come up on the right-hand side. And the co-pilot looked out of the window at me, took off her headset and shook out a big mane of blonde hair. I thought, that bloke's got really long hair.
It's crazy Americans.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He must be some surfer dude.
Hippie. What a
Nick,
hippie.
you're really dating yourself now.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it?
You really, yeah. You saw a Connie in flight. That's
Absolutely,
pretty amazing. That's something I wish I had burned in my memory bank. For sure.
Well, it was a sweet day, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. H. This is kind of a sad. Well, no, I thought this was a different one. An Air France 777, Sao Paulo, on October 13th, encountered cumulo glaciae. Never heard that term before, but basically it ran into a cloud full of hail.
Hail.
Hail, it did. They took off, encountered the hail, prompting the crew to stop the climb at flight level 270. They descended the aircraft to flight level 200. They dumped fuel and they diverted to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, where the aircraft landed safely on Rio's runway 11, about 75 minutes past departure. And has some pictures of the radome. A little bit of denting going on there, maybe even a slight little hole where it encountered the hail. So,
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the radar just can't see hail. I don't care how good of radar you have; it just cannot see it. So, I'm imagining if it's coming out of San Paulo, they're probably doing the backside of the clock flying, so it's probably at night, and they can't really keep that distance that we try to keep away from an anvil because they can't see it at night. So that would be my guess on that one.
well, it happened at 18, 19, 20Z-ish, which probably was still daylight, actually. So be about
that time.
Yeah, 20Z.
Late
maybe,
afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
So actually, probably, yeah, late afternoon there.
I misspoke.
But you're right about the fact that hail is hard to see with our radar technology because it's dry and the rain is wet, obviously, and that's what gives us the good, strong returns. The hail, sometimes, as you mentioned, Dana, it's very difficult to see sometimes. But the first time somebody's run into hail, and I'm sure will not be the last.
Nope.
Oh, for sure.
Now, this is an interesting thing. I did not recall this incident or this accident when it occurred, I believe, sometime in 2017, at the beginning of 2017, I believe, or maybe, what does it say here? Does it have a date on it? Anyway, it happened in Finland, and it was an airplane, a Gulfstream G150, which is a business jet. The company that owned the airplane, Private Airlines Germany, and the aircraft's identification is Oscar Echo Golf Kilo Alpha, have been parked outside the previous evening in this Finnish city, Kittilä, not sure how that's pronounced. And they closed the outflow valve of the aircraft because I guess this is the time of year where they were getting a lot of snow. I believe the temperature was like minus 22 degrees. Oh, the 4th of January. So
Yeah,
that's
this
when it
year.
occurred, I believe, in 2017. And so in order to keep the snow from getting into places that shouldn't get into on this airplane, they closed the outflow valve, the pressurization outflow valve, the previous evening. And then they came out the next day. And they said that the captain closed the outflow valve possibly by using the ditch button in order to prevent ingestion of the snow. The informal practice of using the ditch button to close the valve was not authorized, the Finnish Safety Investigation Authority says, because the button is intended only for emergency use. The captain did not inform the first officer of the valve's closure. Okay, a little breakdown in communication. When the crew showed up the next day, the captain, first officer, and cabin assistant, they were going to ferry the airplane to another city in Finland that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Maybe somebody here can do it, but I can't. The captain entered the cockpit and started the auxiliary power unit, the APU, which generates electricity and bleed air for heating. So they wanted to rapidly warm up the airplane.
Ekaterinburg.
Is that in Finland?
Ekaterinburg? I don't know.
Russian.
I'm guessing it is.
Yeah.
The first officer, meanwhile, was outside brushing snow from the aircraft, and then shortly after that, the captain went out there to join him to brush the snow off the aircraft. And then the captain went back into the airplane to get some gloves. And when he exited the aircraft, the captain closed the door, leaving the cabin assistant inside. The investigators said that the cabin assistant started feeling the sensation of pressure in her ears and chest and sought to attract the pilot's attention by knocking on the window. And then the captain attempted to open the air stair style door. So the door opens out, and then, on the other side of the door, the interior of the door, there's some stairs. he was able to crack the door open, but because the APU was on and the outflow valve was closed, excessive pressure had built up inside the cabin. And as soon as the captain got the thing past that lock, the door violently opened up on top of the captain and killed him. And it knocked over the first officer as well. Yeah, not good.
That's an unbelievably unfortunate accident, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, who would have thought? Obviously, some people did, and he didn't.
And apparently, he may have had a misunderstanding about how that ditch switch works. If the pressurization is in automatic mode and you press the ditch button, the valve doesn't open up. It has to be in manual for the valve to open up. I know nothing about that airplane, so I'm just going on what this article is saying here. So
Yeah, it sounds like the procedure was not an authorized one at any rate.
Yeah, sad. What a way to die!
Oh,
Getting
it's
smashed
terrible.
by a door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was quick. I don't know.
Yeah,
Probably
maybe.
very quick.
Yeah.
And this is a crazy one as well. A fatal seaplane crash in Australia may have been caused by a front seat passenger accidentally knocking out the Canadian pilot of the aircraft. The Australian newspaper reported Jerry Schwartz, a new part owner of the plane's owner, Sydney Seaplanes, suggested crash investigators have a current belief that the pilot, who is a 44-year-old Gareth Morgan, was incapacitated before the December 1st crash of last year. So they think that a possible scenario here may be that one of the passengers was trying to move up to position himself to take some pictures, and may have knocked the pilot in the head with his elbow or something, and
That'd have to be a really hard hit.
or maybe just a properly or just a badly placed
Or
one.
someone who already had some underlying condition that would make them more vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know, but I don't think they really know for sure. I don't know if there would be any
This is
evidence
kind
to
of
show.
speculation at this point. Or,
Well, see, in the intoxication of the passengers.
Well, that was another incident in 2010 of
okay.
a plane crash.
It's in the same
off
article, though.
Yeah, well, that's what they like to do. They like to try
Unbelievable.
to.
They like trying to link these things together. They're probably
Anyway, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
another good reason for not to have single pilot operations on commercial airplanes.
I agree. I think all of us do.
although it's a pretty, I mean, it's not it's not scheduled operations. It's not a commercial airline.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, somebody wouldn't have access to the flight deck in a commercial airline.
Right.
But, I mean, just think of this. What happens if you have a sudden onset of severe tooth pain? I mean, this is a mundane side thing that we can think about, but what happens if you have a toothache that comes on suddenly, right? And you're the only pilot in the flight deck. I mean, that'd be a bad situation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a very non-predictable thing. And there's many other medical things that could happen, but a toothache is pretty debilitating if you have, if you've ever experienced that, which I have, unfortunately.
Sure, but for even in this country though, just to make the point that Part 135 operations and other things like tours, seaplane flights can all be single pilot operations.
Yeah,
I've definitely sat
True.
in the front seat of many of those types of operations.
Yeah, and when I was down in
As a
Belize
passenger.
going scuba diving, I was in the back of a caravan, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm in the last row in this caravan. There's one pilot up there, and I'm a certified pilot. If anything should happen, it's going to be really tough for me to go out all the way up to the front of the airplane, past all these passengers to save the day. That would have been, that's exactly what you're talking about. Is if you're a single pilot, it could be disastrous for sure.
Well, this is a whole spate of bad
It's some
accidents
really
here.
uplifting news this week.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have
Still
some
in the
uplifting
news.
news though at the end of this whole
Good.
thing.
Good.
Well, sort of. It's kind of odd, actually. The Beechcraft 300 Super King Air in Tucson that crashed last year. We did mention this briefly. Weren't sure exactly what happened, and it turns out that the accident report is telling us that the pilot underwent, or the body of the pilot underwent toxicology testing. Revealed the pilot's use of multiple psychoactive substances, including marijuana, venlafaxine,
Mhm.
amphetamine,
Pseudoephedrine, clonazepam, and phenyramine.
Okay. And would
She
that be
speaks that like she knows
I
what
know.
they are.
would that be something bad to have in your system stuff?
Yeah.
Operating an aircraft, yeah. I wouldn't want someone driving a vehicle with all that on board either, to be honest.
From what they can
At least
tell,
not all at the same. I mean, certainly not as a pilot anyway. I was going to put some qualifiers in there in terms of, those medications being prescribed for not. We can probably remove that first one, marijuana, depending on what state you're in. But those other medications are prescribed for legitimate reasons. And I've certainly seen patients who have taken some combination thereof, and people have different responses to them. But I would not want people to be operating machinery, certainly not flying an aircraft, under the influence of all of those medications at the same time.
apparently their investigation didn't reveal any mechanical irregularities with the airplane. So that's why they're assuming it was the substances that he had in the system.
Sad.
Yeah.
Preventable.
And then let's see, the next one, L, sent in by Chris, the guru in northern Alabama. He sent in a link to an article from the AOPA regarding the ADS-B equipment rebate. I guess the FAA has reopened the $500 rebate program to kind of encourage pilots out there, especially, I guess, general aviation pilots, to install the automatic dependent surveillance broadcast ADS-B out equipment. And so if you're out there listening and you have not yet equipped your airplane with the ADS-B, this might be a good time to consider it. Again, that's an extra, or taking $500 off the cost of installing one of these systems, which I believe probably is not very cheap. What, around 2,000, I think, are some of the figures that we've heard for the lowest end?
I think with installation, it's closer to the $3,000 price point.
Okay. All right. And so we just wanted to make everybody aware of that. And then finally, this story in Atlanta.
Well, some pork problems at Hartsfield-Jackson. Airport officials discover a cooked pig in checked luggage. Officials say Canine Hardy, a member of the airport's Beagle Brigade, alerted them to the baggage of a traveler from Ecuador. And inside, specialists discovered this, a nearly 2-pound roasted pig head. Well, pork and pork products from other continents not allowed into the United States. So officers snapped this photo of Hardy and his find before the pig was seized and discarded.
Wow. That's a
Yum.
terrible waste of perfectly good pork meat.
I know, right? Well, they say it was discarded.
That's a tragedy.
They say it was discarded.
Yeah.
Who knows? How
Yeah, that's
Through
what
the
they say.
human digestion system, I hope.
The pictures of the beagle with his find were quite humorous too. It's like, okay, do I get my share now?
A very proud beagle.
I was just thinking how much this lazy dog behind me would like to have that job.
Yeah.
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 Oh, poor Taco.
I've got 3 dogs that could sniff out a roast pork head, no problem at all.
All right.
I assure you I could sniff out that pork head as well. Cooked or uncooked.
It is on the job.
Oh yeah.
Love it.
All right.
Moonlighting career for you, Dan.
Why am I hungry all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Roast pork. Yum. All right. It's time
Picture how
now
I
for
could dress that on my green egg right about now.
time now for feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
So we've already covered the first one, Brett Seymour, the questions regarding the Air India Express jet hitting the ILS antenna assembly and the perimeter wall. Let's start with item 2. Chris sends this in. and he addresses Nick directly. Nick, was this your idea? And the article is about a new Dreamliner park scheduled to open October 12th.
No, to answer that, it wasn't my idea, but I think it's so good. I think there should be several at every airport in the world.
With all their dud Rolls-Royce engines.
Yeah. No, I'm not fussy about what engines they got.
Well, it's only the English with the Rolls-Royce engines that are grounded,
and the Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, there are several different countries that have the Rolls-Royce engine.
Yes, but it's a Rolls-Royce engine, which is an English product.
That is
British.
British.
Yeah, don't forget the Scots and the Irish. They had a part in this.
They all have a
and the
part.
Welsh.
Yeah.
In fact, they're the ones that are probably responsible for it. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
I don't know. I'm just
Darn Americans not trusting them
Terrible.
damn Brits again. Got a whole fleet of airplanes grounded because of the Brits.
Passengers flying through Japan's Chubu Centrair International Airport. That's an interesting name.
Nagoya.
Oh, that's easier to say. Nagoya will have the opportunity to see a Boeing 787 Dreamliner up close starting on October 12th. That's the day. I guess it's already open then. That's the day when the airport will officially open its new 4-story theme park, Flight of Dreams. There's so many things you can say about that, but we're not going to. Anyway, 9 different attractions, jet and projection mapping display on the floor. Admission rates are about $7 for children in 6th grade and younger, and about $11 for adults. They have something they call the Seattle Terrace, located on the 3rd floors of the park. And the terrace is built to mimic the streets of Seattle, the city near which Boeing is headquartered. Wait a minute. That's not true. Boeing is not
true.
headquartered in Seattle.
Nope.
It's
Chicago.
headquartered in
Chicago,
Chicago.
no. That's
Yep.
correct.
Error.
have
It was
the-
not
do
error.
they have
Our
the-
error.
Do they have the first Starbucks, though?
In Seattle, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Actually,
well, I
does
wonder
that
if
have to
they
do with-
mimic the first Starbucks.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
I've been there. There's always a long line.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Starbucks or Chicago?
Starbucks.
There's always a long line in Chicago.
Yes. That's exactly what I was thinking.
In the entire
Everywhere I've been in Chicago, there's always a long line. But it's all well worth it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Chicago's
Yeah.
a great city.
I think we all love it. Okay, moving on.
I'm not sure.
Thank you, Chris, for pointing that out to us and allowing Nick to say something pithy.
I haven't. I'm
Oh.
saying nothing to the fact that this brand new airplane has already been mothballs, but, you know.
Mhm.
There you go.
Implied
That's all right. I say nothing.
opinion.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah, but there's no
Alex.
brand new. I was just going to say something really bad. But
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to
have
stop.
Restrain yourself.
I'm going to stop.
Okay. Alex writes, actually, he sent us an audio file, and let's listen to what he sent us.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Alex from Northwest Alabama. I was doing some PPL training last night, returning to my home field after a night cross-country flight with my instructor. Small Class E airports, and a small regional airline operates out of this airport. And as I was making my my calls as I was returning at about 10 miles out, I noticed one of the pilots from this airline was calling out a right base and then a right final for a certain runway when all of the traffic for all of the runways at this airport is always left traffic. I was taken aback by that. I saw it as a very unsafe and I thought against regulation action. And I was just wondering how prevalent this type of stuff is and how serious that really was. Maybe I'm overreacting, but to me it seemed, again, very unsafe and not predictable at all. So maybe if you guys could provide some feedback on that, I'd appreciate it. And by the way, I believe my feedback on episode 321 was the inspiration for the title of that episode, How to Land a Plane. And I'd like to say that 30 hours later, I have finished all of my PPL requirements and am now using my last 5 hours to prepare for my check ride, hopefully here in about a month to a month and a half. So I appreciate your help along the way, and clear skies. Have a great day. Thanks.
Yay! Way to go, getting your private pilot certificate.
Fantastic accomplishment.
Congratulations.
Woohoo! Yay! That's my noisemaker. I don't know what that sound effect is. Sorry.
I
I'll
think you're
delete
going
that.
for the one that, like, the block that spins around and makes a party noise,
It
not
turned out
not a
sounding-
raspberry.
Hey, Jeff, I've got something to say on that one. Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, you mean his question about the traffic pattern?
No, but you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. The more we talk about it, the harder it's going to be for me to eliminate that from when I edit it.
That's the point.
I know.
That's
so
the point.
I guess I have to leave it in.
So you
Too
just have
late,
to leave
it's
it
out
in
there.
now.
Okay, we'll leave it in then. So regarding his question about the regional operator operating into that small airport and not following the left traffic pattern, I think that, well, you know what? I'm going to sit back. I know how to answer this, but I think that we have some other experts in the panel that will be able to.
I'd like to hear the CFI's explanation for this.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of scratching my head on that as well, Steph, because what would the CFI say, or should he say?
What am I to say?
So
If you were teaching this
well,
to,
not you, the CFI that was with the. Oh, I see. Is that what you were saying?
yeah, it was
Steph. You're going to put it on the onus on him.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, what I would say, I'm not a CFI, but can I say something then?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So I think we're confusing two different types of operations. The traffic pattern is for airplanes operating on a visual flight rule or visual flight rule, FR. Even though an airliner may come in and it may be a beautiful day and they're flying a visual approach, well, a visual approach is not operating under visual flight rules. It's operating under visual meteorological conditions. So it's a nice day, but guess what? You're still on an instrument flight rules plan.
He's Skyping.
Doesn't mean that an airliner or anybody operating on an IFR flight plan necessarily needs to follow that pattern. They can approach it from a right base or a left base, and they're under positive control from air traffic control, even when they're on the visual approach. So Dana and I do this quite often. We'll go into airports and it's a nice day and we say, hey, we have the airport in sight. And they'll say, okay, turn your left base or report your left base with tower or whatever, because they're already setting you up on a downwind or a base leg or a dog leg to final. And then when you say, I have the airport in sight, and they clear us for a visual approach, that does not require us to go, okay, which direction is their traffic pattern, and do I need to enter a 45 to a downwind or enter? We don't do that. It's like apples and oranges, I'd say.
Well, all right. So the CFI is going to talk now.
Okay.
And all we have to do is look at the rules. And the rules are that any aircraft that's on a straight-in final has the right of way. Period. So if we're working at or approaching at an airport that there's a lot of VFR traffic, i.e. Daytona Beach, all right, the aircraft like us, you're talking about if we're cleared for a visual approach, we're going to 7 left into Daytona, for example. That's quite the common runway that we go into. A lot of times there'll be other aircraft that are, working in the pattern, because that's where ERAU is, where you were just last week. So the aircraft that is on the long straight-in final and or approaching the aircraft or the airport, is going to have the right of way. So that really explains it. And there's really not a whole lot of airports out there that you find a whole lot of commercial operations. You'll probably find more corporate flights into smaller airports than you will in an airliner. So there, a jet is required to be, or a faster aircraft is required to be at 1,500 feet above AFE, whereas a general aviation airplane is going to be 1,000 feet. So if they're flying a visual approach per se, and they're flying visually like a student in training would be, and they're flying the the traffic pattern, they're going to be 500 feet above that aircraft and more than likely overtake that aircraft. But that's the most important part of having a CTAF, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, so people can communicate. Go ahead, Jeff.
I don't think it was a situation with no tower. I think there was a tower, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's not what Dana was saying. It was just that
Well, I'm just talking.
that people can build their picture of where everyone else is.
Yeah. So, and that's why I'm talking holistic. I'm talking, if you're in a towered situation where you're in class Charlie or class Bravo, more than likely, of course, class Bravo, you're not going to have students usually flying through there, but class Charlie or class Delta, you have a air traffic control tower there that are going to mitigate, like, for example, back down there in Daytona, that's class Delta, right? So you've got an air traffic control tower that's sequencing aircraft to the airport with an approach sector or approach control. That's what I was trying to think of. Sorry. So anyways, in that type of scenario, yeah, I mean, a turbojet aircraft is going to probably be usually the first one cleared in because, well, we're so much faster. And usually on final approach, where we have a much longer final approach segment because of our speed. So we're not going to churn a 45-degree angle to the final approach to go to, a base, which is what we generally teach as a CFI, is you look over your left wing, generally speaking, and you look for the 45 degrees from the runway, and that's when you start your base churn. You start slowing the aircraft down. You start configuring the aircraft, i.e. putting down your flaps and pulling the power back to 1,500 RPM, and you're getting yourself established on the base and continue down the approach into final approach. So it's really, we do work under the same rules, and they're, class Echo, which is controlled airspace, and class G, which is really, there's no real controlled airspace around the airport. So it really depends on the class of the airspace that you're working in. I mean, if you go to Presque Isle, Maine at 11 o'clock at night, you're probably looking class E to class G airspace. So, it really depends on the individual situation. But someplace like Daytona, you get control tower, approach control, and so they're going to give the preference to whoever they find or decide to give the preference to.
Well, Robert, a good point, said he did say in his audio that it was a Class E airport. Then he says that kind of suggests that there was no tower. Okay, so let's assume there's no tower.
Correct.
And yes, we do operate airliners into non-towered airports, Liz. I know it blew me away when I was a new pilot at Acme Airlines, flying flight engineer and flying into Bozeman, Montana. And at that time, they didn't even have a part-time tower. They had no tower. And Salt Lake Center said, radar service terminated, cleared for an approach. And we were still on an IFR flight plan, but we were not in radar contact anymore, and there was no tower. And I'm thinking, can we really do this? Is this legal? Yes. I know we can. It was an eye opener for me, but I kind of got from the feedback from Alex that his concern about it being unsafe, in his words, was the fact that he wasn't utilizing the proper direction of the traffic pattern. So he came in and did a right base instead of doing a left base.
Well, and that's the key on the CTAF. If and it's very important that most aircraft today, let's face it, have some type of radio communication, have a transponder. Most of them do. Not all. You're not required to have them, but most do. Unless you get to real rural areas, you're going to have, generally speaking, most aircraft are going to have that. But let's be more specific. Class E airspace and Class G airspace. A Class E airspace airport has some type of instrument approach to it, whereas a Class G airport has no instrument approach to it. And I forget what the ceiling is. What's that, Steph?
I was going to say, that's not entirely true with Class G airports.
Well, it can have, generally speaking, Class G is not going to have an approach, generally speaking, but it can have an approach. But there's a lot of things that I'd have to go. I'm actually right in the middle of doing my CFI renewal, so I'm going to have to refresh myself on all this. But it's been a while since I've looked at it. There are some airports out there that will have A Class G will have some type of approach to it, but generally speaking, it's uncontrolled. So that's the real difference between Class E and Class G. And also, I think it's 1,200 feet above the elevation of the airport.
Either 700 or 1,200, depending
700
on
or 1,200. So digging back into my memory banks, but is it safe? Well, what is the prescribed traffic pattern at the airport? Are we flying the prescribed traffic pattern? Well, you can look at the airway information, not the AIM, AFD, Airport Flight Directory for the airport, which is published by the government, and it will tell you what the traffic pattern and the altitude for the traffic pattern is at that airport. Or you can overfly the airport, or you can contact CTAF and ask, what is the traffic pattern? So there are different ways to ascertain what the current and proper traffic pattern at that airport. And yes, is it a safety concern? Of course. I mean, if everybody's in the left pattern, you're in the right pattern, well, now you could potentially be in a head-on collision on a base to final approach. Certainly.
Now, those airports that Dana and I do fly into, that have sometimes non-towered operations going on, in our company pages, we are given the information about the traffic pattern direction. And also we have guidance that basically says it's up to the discretion of the flight crew to determine what the safest mode of operation would be. Does it make more sense to get into the flow of the pattern and enter a 45 to downwind and do a pattern like that? Or would it be best to just continue with a straight in approach? But I think the key is, as Dana and Steph has mentioned here, is communication. Making sure that you're telling everybody that's within earshot on that frequency that where you are, what you are doing, so that everybody's made aware of it. And so it's not necessarily, in my opinion, unsafe what the regional airliner did, unless they just completely disregarded all the operations that were going on there at the airport.
So, I can just, my experience with this operating at a Class E Echo airport, non-towered, but with regularly scheduled regional airline traffic. Back when I was just after I got my private pilot certificate, and actually was doing some instrument training at the time as well. But basically what I observed to happen, and it depended on, a lot of variables. So which direction we're landing on the main runway, which was 0220. And the traffic was almost always coming from the west to this airport, which was quite a bit in the eastern part of the state of North Carolina. So a lot of times what would happen is if we were landing to the south and the conditions were visual, the regional aircraft would join the pattern by overflying the field and then joining a downwind base final. If, however, for the landing to the south, if, however, the conditions were more marginal and they were in instrument conditions for quite a bit of the approach, or even for the majority of the approach, then they would generally be vectored in to join a downwind or join a final. So it'd be a right pattern to land to the south, if that makes sense. But there was always communication on the common traffic advisory frequency. Any aircraft that was in the vicinity of that airport would be or should be listening to that frequency, and people can generally figure out where each other are based on position reports.
Right. And that's exactly the key. I mean, as I said, most general aviation aircraft, and of course all commercial aircraft, have some way of communicating between us, in between each other, so you can get a kind of visual picture, and that's kind of a requirement. That's what the FAR AIM says. And as I said, the AFD, Airport Facility Directory, would have that information published as well. So I'm gonna say no more on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I helped or we helped at all with Alex's question. I guess it's up in the air. Some people maybe think that it's not very safe, and others didn't think that safety was compromised. But we'll see. Or not we'll see, but that's just our different thoughts about it. And there's a nice discussion in the chat room. We all know how Captain Nick feels about visual approaches, and some of us feel differently. but that's because I'm from America and I'm a cowboy and I like visual approaches.
Yeah,
We don't have much choice.
and I'm flying a heavy jet, so
Yeah.
I think personally, in a lot of the airfields I go to, like major airfields like Washington, doing visual approaches and mixing traffic is just a way for the air traffickers to abrogate their responsibility to me, rather than taking control of separation for themselves. And quite honestly, when you're mixing with small light aircraft, we don't have a particularly good view out of our flight decks. It's not brilliant. And certainly, if we do spot someone, our ability to maneuver the airplane is incredibly restricted. We've only got one real option, and that's to go around. So, if you think you're too close to someone, so it's not an option I like taking. I much prefer to let the air trafficker do his proper job, put us on an instrument approach, and let us come in that way.
Yeah, the bigger concern for me, at least, is at a lot of these non-towered airports that I fly into and out of regularly, where you have a single runway. So landing, departing either direction, depending on the wind. If the winds are either negligible or not particularly favoring one runway or the other, so kind of just more of a direct crosswind, you will get, it's really pilot's discretion as to which runway you wish to use. If someone's already established in the pattern and going one direction, most people will continue with that as long as that's safe for the wind conditions. But I've certainly encountered it where, I've made, I think I talked about this actually not too long ago, where I was making radio calls for my intentions to enter the traffic pattern to land on, I don't know, we'll say runway 2, and no one else was saying anything back to my radio calls. And I got there and found out that someone was in the pattern going the opposite direction for runway 20. So, and not making any radio calls at all. So you really just have to pay attention and stay outside of the traffic circuit until you're fully aware of what's going on in the traffic pattern.
ADSB is going to help a lot when that becomes compulsory.
Yeah, that aircraft also did not have ADSB out. So they may not have even had a radio, which
2020, the world will change.
Right.
At least in America.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath.
So, and it's interesting to me that our perspectives are so different regarding these. To me, I see where you're coming from, Nick, and the fact that you feel that it's better for the ATC person to have full control over what you're doing in your spacing, wake turbulence criteria, and everything else, implying that it's going to be safer that way. For me, if I'm cleared a visual approach and now I'm responsible for it, and if I think I'm too close to the preceding down, because I've been cleared a visual approach, I can do whatever I need to do that's necessary for the safety of my flight. So I feel like it gives me more options to operate more safely. So it's just interesting, our perspective.
No, I agree that you do, but I have that option also. Even when I'm under air traffic's guidance on an instrument approach, if I can see the guy ahead, I can still unilaterally make a decision to do something that is in the best interest of the safety of my aircraft. But it's not just me now monitoring it. I've got myself and the air traffic controller doing it.
Well,
So
they're still going to be
watching the
they're still
situation.
monitoring it.
Yeah,
It's not like they're looking at something else,
Well, they might very well, having cleared you for a visual, their attention might be diverted elsewhere. But as you're an instrument approach, they're obliged to ensure you maintain separation.
Okay.
Interesting
We'll just agree to disagree. Okay. We just have different perspectives. That's all. And the kind of flying we're doing is different as well.
Absolutely.
And mom for me is the word.
All right. Okay. Let's do the best part of the show, which of course is our weekly installment of The Old Pilot's Plain Tale. Here we go.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. The Wave Scrapers. It's May 1942, and America has joined the Second World War, committing many of its combat resources to campaigns around the world. On the east coast of America, vital shipping bound for Allied ports, such as those in Britain, are being sunk by German submarines. The German U-boat commanders were bold, and they had started to operate even as close as a few hundred yards off the coast, where it was easier to locate the merchantmen before they became lost in the vast Atlantic Ocean. Tankers and cargo vessels were being sunk at a rate of 2 a day, but between Halifax and Florida, there was 1,200 miles of coast for the Navy to patrol, and they were spread way too thin. Facing the efficient and deadly U-boats were 5 old Eagle boats, 3 ocean-going yachts, less than a dozen Coast Guard ships, a few blimps, and a handful of aircraft. Any merchantman who got past Cape Hatteras afloat considered himself lucky. The losses had been so terrible that the figures were being withheld from the public, and for a few humiliating weeks, all coastal vessels were ordered to stay in harbour until convoys could be organised. Enemy agents rubbed shoulders with sailors in waterfront bars, and the advice drummed into people of war-torn Britain that loose lips sink ships had yet to be taken fully on board in the States. The U-boat commanders had become brazenly impudent, and they sank a ship in the mouth of the Connecticut River and 2 more in the St. Lawrence. They crept into the lower Mississippi to threaten shipping leaving New Orleans, and reserving their torpedoes for more difficult prey, they often surfaced and used their 4-inch guns, which were more than a match for the lightly armed U.S. patrol boats. So confident were the U-boat crews that they surfaced in daylight to charge batteries and even hung out their washing while sunbathing on decks. There were, however, aircraft airborne, and some were armed. Johnny Haggins and Wyatt Farr were flying a Grumman Widgeon, and keeping a close eye on the surface of the ocean, their diligence was finally rewarded. They had been shadowing the dim underwater shape of a submerged U-boat for hours when, at last, the submarine came up to periscope's depth. With a clear target, they ran in and dropped the 2 depth charges they carried, pulling up to avoid the plumes of water that shot up from the surface. They circled back around, but the only sign that they could find of the U-boat was debris and an oil slick on the surface, which seemed to show a kill. The remarkable thing about the mission that Haggins and Wyatt were flying was that it wasn't a military mission, and they were civilians, for they were members of the Civil Air Patrol. Let's go back a bit to the 18th of September, 1892, and the arrival of Gil Rob Wilson into the world. Born to the Reverend Gil Owen Wilson and his wife Amanda Robb, Gil Rob grew up motivated by youthful idealism and a deep sense of responsibility. When the First World War broke out, he traveled to France to assist in the war effort. Gil initially became an ambulance driver, but then became a member of the Lafayette Flying Corps, serving the French Escadrille 117, 66, and 163D squadrons. After the Great War, he returned home and followed his father's vocation, attending a seminary and becoming a pastor of the Presbyterian Church. It was after the tragic death of his wife and second child that he lost the use of his voice, and with his doctors advocating complete silence to hasten his recovery, he sadly left his work in the church behind him. The Presbyterian Church's loss was a gain, though, for the world of aviation, as Gil became the Director of Aeronautics for New Jersey, where, amongst other things, he oversaw the Board of Inquiry into the Hindenburg airship disaster. And in his new position, he was able to promote and develop aviation in the United States. It was Gil Rob Wilson who first imagined the uses that the growing band of aviation enthusiasts could be put to, and it was he who saw that dream become a reality. He had taken note of Germany's reaction at the start of hostilities and the grounding of all their civil pilots, and he was worried that if America was drawn into the war, a similar thing might happen in the US. At the start of the war, there were more than 128,000 licensed private pilots in the States, flying around 25,000 light aircraft, maintained by 14,000 mechanics, from around 2,500 airfields. By now the editor of Flying magazine, Gill wrote that, if properly organized, private aviation could be a valuable national asset, relieving military pilots from some of the burdensome liaison, light transportation and reconnaissance work. With the enthusiastic backing of General Henry Arnold and the Civil Aeronautics Authority, New Jersey established a civil defense service, and following its success, other states followed suit. A previous mayor of New York, Fiorello LaGuardia, a former bomber pilot from the Great War and by then the director of the Office of Civil Defense, signed the order creating the Civil Air Patrol on the 1st of December 1941, only 6 days before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Gill was given only 90 days to prove that his ideas could be made into reality, but with the enthusiastic and financial support of the oil companies, whose valuable tankers lay burning along the coast, he set to. The idea of civil assistance had been growing in the background, and once news of the tides washing up charred corpses onto the oil-soaked beaches of America became public, and official backing was obtained, enthusiastic volunteers came forward, and the organization rapidly blossomed. Bases in two. We had never flown across anything wider than the Delaware from up and down the Civil Aeronautics Authority. New Jersey established a civil defense service, and following its success, other states followed suit. A previous mayor of New York, Fiorello LaGuardia, a former bomber pilot from the Great War and by then the director of the Office of Civil Defense, signed the order creating the Civil Air Patrol on the 1st of December 1941, only 6 days before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Gill was given only 90 days to prove that his ideas could be made into reality, but with the enthusiastic and financial support of the oil companies, whose valuable tankers lay burning along the coast, he set to. The idea of civil assistance had been growing in the background, and once news of the tides washing up charred corpses onto the oil-soaked beaches of America became public, and official backing was obtained, enthusiastic volunteers came forward, and the organization rapidly blossomed. Bases in Atlantic City, New Jersey, Rehoboth, Delaware, and West Palm Beach soon opened to cover the known hotspots of enemy shipping attacks, known as the graveyards, where sinkings were almost a daily occurrence. The call came for the best qualified civilian pilots in the country to come, and with their own aircraft, come they did. They not only brought their own skills, but arrived with radios, spare parts, vehicles, anything that might help the budding organization. Most early arrivals were Easterners, but the ones who came later were from up and down the country, from 45 different states. Amongst them were barnstormers, lawyers, bus drivers, manufacturers, mechanics, doctors, and shoe clerks. Men like Tom Easterman, a wealthy Manhattan broker, shared assignments with Ben Berger, a Denver bakery truck driver. Many were women, who not only shared work as typists, radio operators, and plotters, but were pilots as well. The call went out for airworthy aircraft of 90 horsepower or more to be put into action. Fairchilds, Beechcraft, Stinsons, Wackos, and heavier aircraft arrived with the promise of hourly rates covering out-of-pocket expenses and depreciation. There was a concern that should the Civil Air Patrol crews be captured by the German military, they might be shot, since they wouldn't be covered by the Geneva Convention. So the War and State Departments ensured that the organization became known to foreign governments. The Army agreed to cover the flights under official orders, and the letters US became part of the official emblem. There was a dearth of experience when it came to flying long patrols over water, but undaunted, Hugh Sharp set off on the first coastal patrol on March the 5th, 1942. We had never flown across anything wider than the Delaware River, and we were scared stiff, Sharp commented later. A few days later, the first flight out of Atlantic City set off, and Wyant Farr, a New York cardboard manufacturer, in a bright yellow Fairchild, with nothing but an inflated inner tube in the back should they ditch. 15 minutes out, they saw the floundering hulk of a torpedoed tanker with a few surviving men waving weakly from the oil-stained waters below. Reporting the survivors' position, a Coast Guard cutter soon came speeding out. Only a few days later, the fledgling organization found the enemy. 2 aircraft out of Rehoboth surprised a U-boat about to fire a torpedo into the side of a tanker near the shoals off Cape May. At first, they thought the submarine was another ship floundering with its decks awash, but when they realized what it was, the unarmed aircraft dived down and buzzed the submarine. The U-boat commander crash-dived his vessel, and it disappeared. The Civil Air Patrol was proving its worth. Initially, they were limited to patrols, and their only weapon was the aircraft's radio with its ability to call in support. But frequently, armed military aircraft or surface ships arrived too late to attack. On one occasion, the sight of a CAP patrol caused a submarine to dive onto a sandbar where it became stuck in plain sight. For more than half an hour, the aircraft circled the stranded U-boat, but before the bombers arrived, it had pulled itself free and had disappeared into deep water. After that, the orders came for the CAP aircraft to be fitted with bomb racks so that they might carry small bombs or even depth charges. So it was that Johnny Haggins and Wyant Farr, flying the CAP Grumman Widgeon, were able to attack their submarine. However, despite the evidence of oil and debris that they saw, sadly, subsequent German records show no U-boat was lost on that day. Coastal patrols stood down on August the 31st, 1943, by which time both the Navy's and the Army Air Force's anti-submarine forces had grown large enough to handle the mission. During the near 18-month period, CAP had flown 86,685 overwater sorties, spotted and reported 91 merchant vessels, and 363 survivors in distress. They reported 173 U-boat positions. It sadly lost 90 aircraft and 26 crew members to accidents. After the war, 824 Coastal Patrol pilots and observers received air medals, and Edmund Edwards and Hugh Sharp were each awarded a second air medal with V Defense for Valor for their rescue of a CAP pilot who had ditched at sea. However, the deterrent value of the Civil Air Patrol was obvious, and their list of duties grew and grew. Now, with a formal rank structure and a uniform, members of the CAP were tasked with carrying cargo, conducting border patrols, towing targets for gunnery practice, searchlight tracking missions, carrying couriers, flying blood hospitals, monitoring forest fires, conducting mock raids to test blackout procedures and air raid warnings. The organization also ensured that non-flyers could perform useful duties to help in the war effort. Their personnel guarded airfields, patrolled power lines and waterways, guarding against saboteurs. They also helped the Red Cross and others during natural disasters, flying in help and evacuating survivors. It also started a vital and long-lasting duty, indeed one of its most important missions, pilot training. As early as 1942, they were recruiting and training Civil Air pilot cadets to assist with the administration of the organization and to be trained towards becoming fully fledged licensed pilots. Within 6 months of starting, the CAP had over 20,000 cadets, many of whom would go on to become military pilots. On April the 23rd, 1943, a presidential executive order transferred jurisdiction for the Civil Air Patrol from the Office of Civil Defense to the War Department, and CAP became an auxiliary of the Army Air Forces. However, at the conclusion of the war in 1946, Congress passed Public Law 476, incorporating CAP as a non-profit organization solely of a benevolent character. CAP members would never again participate in direct combat operations. After the U.S. Air Force was established as a separate service in 1947, CAP and USAF officials started meeting to reevaluate their future relationship, and on May the 26th, 1948, Congress passed Public Law 557, establishing CAP as the official civilian auxiliary of the Air Force. Headquartered at Maxwell Air Force Base, the Civil Air Patrol today operates under USAF's Air Education and Training Command, and units exist all across the United States. It currently has 33,500 senior members and 24,500 cadets, and maintains a fleet of 560 light aircraft. In times of emergency, it can also draw from its members 4,300 privately owned aircraft. Although civilians in every legal sense, CAP members can wear modified USAF uniforms with their distinctive insignia. While many senior members, those aged over 21, are pilots, most are not. Anyone can volunteer for a supporting role with specialty training available in operations, communications, logistics, and every other function required to run a flying organization. The CAP also fields ground search and rescue and disaster relief teams that coordinate with federal, state, and local responders. The Civil Air Patrol's three primary missions are emergency services, aerospace education, and the cadet programs. Today, the patrol flies 85% of all inland search and rescue missions under the operational control of the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. Its members typically save the lives of 75 to 100 people a year. CAP also has formal operating agreements with many of the nation's leading disaster relief and humanitarian agencies, including the FAA, National Transport Safety Board, U.S. Coast Guard, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the American Red Cross. Since 1986, CAP air crews have also flown counter-drug missions under the operational control of the Air Force and the U.S. Customs Service. The cadet membership is open to youths between the ages of 12 and 18, and many cadets go on to either the U.S. Air Force Academy or to senior ROTC in college. On May the 30th, 2014, Congress awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, its highest civilian honor, to the World War II members of the Civil Air Patrol. According to Public Law 113-108, the CAP's wartime service was highly unusual and extraordinary due to the unpaid civilian status of its members, the use of privately owned aircraft, and personal funds by many of its members, the myriad humanitarian and national missions flown for the nation, and the fact that for 18 months during a time of great need for the United States, the CAP flew combat-related missions in support of military operations off the Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico coasts. A fine achievement, I'm sure you'll agree. If you enjoy Plain Tales, please pop over to iTunes and leave us a review. Plain Tales is a featured segment of the Airline Pilot Guy Show podcast. Find us at airlinepilotguy.com.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Nick.
Oh, thanks, Mel.
Yeah, I
That's
was
not
actually
something-
part of it, so I was part of the air wing down in Noonan. And I was
Brilliant.
involved with that, so
Brilliant.
Great
that
job.
kind of thing worries me when I know very little about a subject, and I know that everyone else I'm speaking to, or at least certainly in the States, probably knows a lot about it. I kind of go, "Oh, this is a bit worrying."
yeah, you did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it was great.
Brilliant. Thanks.
And we have a lot of CAPers that listen to our show, including Adam Reese in Houston. Are you guys still getting me, or is the
No,
okay.
no, yeah,
Loud
yeah.
and clear.
Because
What'd you say?
you all are kind of getting a little fuzzy, so maybe it's I haven't had anything to drink, so it couldn't be that.
Let's say you had a couple beers already.
No, I didn't actually. I had
That
several
soup is-
yesterday. Robert, enabler.
I had a lot. I had a lot to drink right now.
Did you?
Yes, my soup. It was fantastic.
Oh, good. Anyway, Adam Reese down in Houston, the Texas wing, and he sent us feedback a few times, and I believe I got to meet you, Adam, right? That meetup that we had in Houston last year or the year before. Anyway,
Brilliant.
good.
And of course, there was John Jester who suggested doing a plain tale about the Civil Air Patrol. And our lovely friend Armando Cannion, he started, I believe, as a cadet and stayed with it, moved all the way up to squadron commander. So he had a long time in it and obviously benefited since he's now a USAF pilot and doing very well for himself, as well as being a civil airline pilot. So fantastic job, sir.
Excellent. And a very good one. And you did a great job, as you always do. So thank you, Nick, for that.
Many thanks.
Let's see. I think that we'll move on with some more feedback here. I believe we have about 15 minutes left in the show. And we're going to go with item 6. We have some more audio feedback. And this is Nick Knack Jack.
Hey, APJ crew. This is Nick Knack Jack. And I wanted to give you some feedback regarding United 839 and their fuel emergency into Sydney. I fly the Pacific in the simulator fairly often. And once you get south of Hawaii, on that particular route, you actually have a lot of options as far as alternate airports go. So I'm really curious as to why they wound up all the way up at Sydney with minimum reserves. You would think, just looking at the map, you have Fiji, you have New Caledonia, you have a number of other airports in between the area south of Hawaii and Sydney itself. So I'm really curious as to why they would end up with low reserves. I'm looking at a dispatch that I've done in my simulator with the 787 on that route. I'm showing release fuel of 192,788. Which gives me 16 hours and 28 minutes worth of fuel and 10% contingency plus an alternate of Canberra. So I'm really curious about this. I wonder if dispatcher Mike might have some additional insight as to why they might have ended up in this situation. I'm thinking headwinds, but I don't know. Anyway. I thought that was a really interesting story. Keep up the great podcast. And I have got my own fuel situation to worry about as I fly my 747 to jolly old England. So anyway, thanks for the great show. Interesting story, and take care.
Thank you, Nick Knack Jack, for that audio feedback. And he was referring to that United Dreamliner that declared a Mayday for emergency fuel. Ned also sent us in some feedback regarding this incident and our discussion of it. He has a quote from, where did he get this? Does it say?
Probably
on
the
there?
ICAO.
Yeah, ICAO
document.
or FARs or something.
Okay. Yes, it's section 12.1 of whatever document this is from, emergency fuel. The pilot in command shall declare a situation of fuel emergency by broadcasting Mayday, 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 fuel, when the calculated usable fuel predicted to be available upon landing at the nearest airport where a safe landing can be made is less than the planned fixed fuel reserve, and as a result of this predicted fuel state, the aircraft requires immediate assistance. In this case, there was a last-minute increase in traffic holding, some aircraft being delayed in excess of 40 minutes, which meant that the aircraft would land with less than statutory fuel reserves. At departure, the aircraft may not be able to carry the total of 30 minutes fixed reserve plus 10% of the total fuel burn, and as such, a recalculation of the required fuel is made at an intermediate en route point, as though the flight was actually departing from that point. This point at which this calculation occurs takes into account PNR and critical point. What's PNR?
Point of
no
no
return.
No return.
Yeah. And critical point. Captain Nick, you may like to explain these terms. Oh, there you go. This used to be called making fuel. And we call it at Acme redispatch procedures, I believe. And he said, I hope this is useful. Thanks for an entertaining and informative podcast. Wing commanders, weather to you all. And that means you never let the wing commander fly unless the weather is really, really good. Regards.
Absolutely.
Air traffic controller since 1974. And he's held a commercial private license since
Commercial pilot license, yes.
Pilot license, thank you. Since 1970.
Excellent. I want to say, was it Dispatcher Mike that has addressed this on his podcast before? If you're interested in that recalculation or redispatch, as it's called at Acme.
Yep.
Yeah, the most common method we use to make fuel is actually to have a second nominated destination. So our primary destination is where we want to go, but some distance short, we have a secondary destination. And if we get to a decision point just short of that secondary destination, we predict we're unable to get to our primary destination without our normal company reserves, then we can land at our closer destination. And it's just I don't want to use the word fudge because it's perfectly legal and within the authorized system. But it's just a way to arrive at your destination with a lower level of legal reserve. And it's a common practice in these days of not wanting to carry around more fuel than you actually need. Excuse me, I'm starting to lose my voice.
Perfectly legal fudge. Okay, he's muted himself. All right, thank you for adding your expertise to the conversation, Nick, while you recover your voice.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, you're right. There are several of these perfectly legal ways of making fuel. Of course, doesn't mean that the commander doesn't have to adhere to them. If he sees a reason to carry extra, he will put it on, and I have done many times. And to the absolute credit of my company, I have never, ever in all the years I've been flying with them had a fuel decision I've made questioned by anybody. So from that point of view, I take my hat off to my company and say, thank you very much, Steve, for letting me do my job without interference.
Yes, we are blessed to work for companies that, are conservative when it comes to that. And we never feel pressured to fly with levels of fuel that are unsafe.
Yeah.
What's your personal minimum, Jeff? When you look at the landing fuel in the airport, what do you feel comfortable with going with planned?
I look at several things. I look at what the minimum reserve they have, and I go with that. And it's almost always accompanied by contingency fuel, both planned and unplanned. And so when you take those two in consideration, it's well more than what they say for the minimum or the reserve fuel for us. So I don't actually have a set number. It really depends on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly won't ever go with less than about 6,500 pounds. Landing with 6,500. That's the number I look at.
Yeah.
I look at the weather. I look at contingency. Let me say it properly. Contingency, and I take those things into consideration. Of course, then I think about the fact that I'm a high minimums captain, and look at the weather very closely. And I always want to carry a little extra fuel just in case.
Yeah, I always make a decision on the conservative side as well. I look at, for instance, alternate fuel, and then the minimum reserve fuel, and then I add those two together, and I'll usually add at least 1,000 pounds or more as far as a bingo figure for my personal. Yeah, I think most of us do that actually. And speaking of fuel issues, item number 7. This was an interesting one. He said, this is from Chris regarding the discussion on defueling a few episodes ago. An interesting thing happened in Sweden last week after an equipment change going out of my home airport. The aircraft should have been on a flight down to Southern Europe, but was instead moved to a domestic flight to Stockholm and would have been too heavy to land on arrival. They did not do defueling, but rather made an extra tour around the country. And then there's a link to the Flight Radar 24 flight path of this flight, which was Scandinavian Air Services SAS Flight 140. And they were leaving Gothenburg. Is that the way you pronounce that? Gothenburg? Hello? Somebody help me. Help.
No clue.
Gothenburg.
Okay. You do pronounce the TH. Okay. Gothenburg to Stockholm. And via going almost due north up to, we'll hear the pronunciation of this area, Östersund.
Yes.
To
Östersund
to burn fuel. And so it goes way up to the north, way past Stockholm, and then back to the southeast, and then due south into Stockholm. The normal average flight time on this flight is around 49 minutes, and this particular flight was 1 hour and 29 minutes, so about 40 minutes, almost twice as long as the normal flight. And it kind of perplexed air traffic control a little bit, as Joe and Peter, I don't, why does it say Chris at the top? Maybe I mislabeled this one. Anyway,
I think that's just a.
Oh, Chris sent it in, but this was the post by Joe and Pete. Okay, gotcha. He says ATC was a little baffled over this flight plan, as heard on this audio file on liveatc.net.
Departure Scandinavian 32 Juliet 2000 climbing.
Scandinavian 32 Juliet to the boy, radar contact. Climb to Frank level 150.
Flight level 150, Scandinavian 32 Juliet.
And confirm you want to go via Östersund för Arlanda?
Ja, konstigt då.
Vi alltså flyga så via flaggen, eller via, som du har via flaggan?
Affirm, we are rather heavy, too heavy to land with this fuel.
Yep.
That's due to max landing weight.
Okay.
So,
tack min vän betala.
Excuse me.
Just thought I'd throw
Nice,
in a
but
little bit of local lingo there.
That
Oh,
this
okay.
is my friend. He has the money. No.
No, 2 beers, please, my friend.
Two
will
beers.
pay.
Sorry, I was close. Yeah.
You know that phrase in every single language,
Yeah.
don't you?
If I'm ever in a foreign country with Nick and they start speaking a language I don't know, I'm hiding my wallet and I'm going to go,
Well, I can get away with it in most Scandinavian countries, but I believe it's Swedish, but I can't be sure about that. And I was taught it a long time ago, so my pronunciation is probably awful. My apologies to the lovely Swedish people.
Oh, man. So anyway, an interesting way to resolve the problem of having too much fuel. Again, it was originally scheduled to fly to somewhere in Southern Europe, but instead was a much shorter flight. And maybe the availability of the equipment to defuel the airplane was a player here, or maybe they had to pay a lot of money to have somebody do that for them. So they decided, we'll just go and fly around until the aircraft is under its maximum landing weight. And that worked too.
Well, we were faced with a similar problem when we used to operate from Gatwick to somewhere in Nigeria called Port Harcourt. We weren't allowed to land before dawn, but we had to get airborne before the night jet ban at Gatwick. And the flight time was too short. So we used to have to, too short. So we had to try and make the flight as long as possible so that we didn't land in the dark. And that was another case where you try and explain to every air trafficker that you didn't want any directs. And we would trug along at our slowest practical speed, going the longest possible route, just so that we made sure we landed at the right time. By the way, Carl is saying, say it again, Nick. So just for Carl, to iltak min ven betela.
There you go, Carl.
I hope Carl understands that.
Columbus, Mississippi,
There
where
you
I've
go.
spent 5 years of my life in beautiful Columbus by the sea. It's not by the sea.
I was going to say, really?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
By the Tennessee Tom Bigby Rivers Waterway System or whatever. We'll just do a quick one here, and then we'll end the show. And this one's from Ivan 4. He's at Ivan Marks, writes in using the APG app. Hi, Captain Jeff. I was at Dobbins Air Force Base this weekend. That's in Atlanta on the north side. Got very close to where Dana lives. Got to walk into the cockpit of a old C-141. Yeah, they're all the C-141s that are still in existence are old. That's one impressive plane. Love the show. Thanks to you and the crew. And he took a snapshot of that old ancient airplane and brings back a lot of memories for me. So thank you for that. And with that, if you want to learn more about the show, get involved in the community and all that jazz, head over to Airline.
Hang on a minute, Jeff. What's that big wheel for?
That's the steering tiller.
No, the big one.
Nick is unfamiliar with conventional.
That thing that
controls for
goes between your
aircraft.
legs. That big old thing between your legs.
Well, I don't know.
He's definitely not familiar with that.
Depends whether you're going to put your legs to one side of it or not. But
that's the sign of a manly airplane right there, man.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And what are all the red buttons for?
For disconnecting things.
Oh, sorry.
Ejection seat.
So one ejects you first officer and the other ejects you. Yeah, okay,
I have no idea what those things are for. It's been so long since I've flown that airplane. Come on, give me a break.
I like the split trim switches. Very smart.
Yep. That's the airplane that Dana and I fly, have the split trims. In fact, every airplane I've flown has had that kind of arrangement.
Yeah, same here. Excellent.
Yep.
No, I just wanted to pull you up. That's a great looking wheel there to turn.
Well, you know what? It's not a wheel. Come on.
Wheel?
The wheel's over there off to the left.
The yolk. That's what you get in the middle of an egg. Really, we have to go there again?
Yeah. Why do we have to end the show like this? I wish it was my fault for doing this. I should have known that. Ivan, you should have sent a photo of the center console instrument cluster, because there's a lot of vertical tape instruments, and the Starlifter was one of the earliest jets to use that technology instead of the round dials. They had the vertical tapes for a lot of the engine and other renders. Yeah. Anyway, thanks again, Ivan, and I do apologize for Captain Nick. We're always apologizing for Captain Nick. So if you want to learn more about the show and the community and all that stuff, head over to airlinepilotguy.com. Get our free apps for both iOS and Android platforms. Information about that on the website as well as in the show notes. And on social media, we're there, right?
We are, I think, still. So head on over
Yeah.
to Twitter and confirm that for us. At APG Crew is our handle. We're all there and we'll interact with you. Find our individual Twitter information pinned to the top of that page. Also, you can head over to facebook.com/airlinepilotguy, interact with the community, ask the crew or send I guess people have sent feedback there as well. It'll make it to us or to individual members of the crew, mostly manned by Captain Nick and producer Liz.
Absolutely. And we're also on Slack. Hillel, come on out. Okay, be right there.
Wow.
Why is Hillel giggling?
Okay, here we go. Come on.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1. And see you in Slack.
Thank you, Hillel. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.
You sound so down right there at the end.
I do.
Yeah, the show's ending. He's
I know
saying
it's
the
oh
show's
my God.
ending. I'm not going to speak to my friends for another week.
I hope.
Shut up, Jeff.
I'm sorry about the interruption of the Plain Tales today.
That was weird because listen. Was that your fault?
Yeah, so I was doing that motion on the trackpad to like bring up all the things all the different windows, and apparently it read that as swipe left and go back to whatever you were viewing before in Evernote, which of course stops the playback of any audio that's playing at the time.
No.
I was going to say, I didn't listen to it earlier. Anyway.
Yeah. So I got somewhere close to where it was, I think. So I do apologize for messing that up. But don't worry. FIIP, that's my new term. Fix it in post.
That just gives you more work to do, though.
Yeah, but that's okay. It's a labor of love. So anyway, I need to stop recording.
Yeah, mine's already stopped, and I'm sending it away, I think.
Oh,
Just-
to who?
You.
Oh, okay.
Evernote, actually.
To the abyss.
To the abyss.
Just sending it in the trash.
I can never figure out. Yeah, 3, 4. There
Okay,
it
mine's
is. All notes.
Save it. And
What was this? 3:45.
Yep.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
oh, wait a minute,
11,
Tristan, you don't have a blue spanner of death. Okay, we can fix that. Everybody is the same here at APG.
Blue spanner for you. Blue spanner for you.
And I think
Start
people
calling it a
did.
spanner. It's a wrench here. Come on.
I know it's a spanner wrench, I think, to be exact. So we kind of go wrench, and the Brits kind of say spanner for some reason. Did anybody try to do something to me with their blue spanner?
Yeah,
wrench?
I wrote a very sharp order. I don't think it had any effect
Well,
on
I
you.
saw that, but no, that's not how you set the naughty corner.
Are you sure? Oh, damn.
Yeah, well, no, I think it has more to something to do with like a item on the drop down.
Yeah, we can't bin you, sadly.
And the king. I'm the whiz.
The king.
I can't
Yes,
seem
you
to
are.
ban anyone. How does that work again? I forgot.
The button,
Seinfeld
the
reference
row
in New York
dots on
City.
the side.
I think
Yeah.
there was some kind of electronics. The spotty M that I didn't quite grasp. Yeah.
What?
The electronics and the spotty M. Sorry,
What are you talking about?
No, I think I must have been interrupted my stream. So anyway, forget about the spotty M. Somebody said something about dots on a crown, and then that reminded me of Monarch and the spotty M, and the fact that I didn't understand what that was.
I got you.
Ah.
So I'm all over the place. But the reference to the Wiz is, I guess there was like an electronics superstore or something like that in New York City, and a really hokey commercial where a guy came on and he was wearing a crown and a cape and like a scepter or something like that, and I'm the Wiz. I don't know. They talk about it on Seinfeld.
Well,
are we still like completely have no idea what I'm talking about?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, very good.
No clue.
Maybe.
I'm trying to work out how Taco has gone from being nearly a dead dog to bouncing around and.
Well, now he's disappeared.
Second win.
He went outside. Yeah. Well, daycare knocked him out for a couple hours. He was.
Doesn't take long for his. Where do you plug him in for his batteries to recharge that quickly?
I don't know. He's like the Energizer Bunny, though. Just
he is, isn't he?
That's what they
but
do.
yeah, the toy is still going. It doesn't squeak quite as robust as it did before, but it still does. There's no holes in it.
All right. I've decided because it's in America, it's Megan's crown now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. See, we're infiltrating now.
Yep, you are.
Sorry.
And, that's right.
It's okay. It's probably bigger news here than it is there. It's like royal baby watch for however many more months she's pregnant for. She's only like
a week. Well, probably longer than that, but that's how long the announcement's been out for.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the Seinfeld reference I was talking about.
Nobody thinks the Wiz is slashing prices on our entire stock.
Nobody beats me because I'm the Wiz. Yes, I'm the Wiz. I'm the Wiz.
Yeah.
So, and main man Micah says that was based on Crazy Eddie. Okay. A lot more.
Let's hear Crazy Eddie then.
Damn it.
Well, if you want to go, Dan, you don't have to stay here.
I just figured out why in the world I'm listening to this buzz the whole damn time.
Why?
Because I never plugged my Bose into the adapter here to charge it and get rid of the damn buzz, which completes the circuit. Now, oh my God.
Oh. Technology.
Oh my. I'm sitting here and this whole entire time listening.
It's a Crazy Eddie Christmas in August audio blowout blitz. Crazy Eddie's going to save you a blizzard of bucks on stereo rack systems, compact disc players, portable stereos, speakers, turntables, receivers, anything and everything in audio's on sale now. Remember, we are not undersold. We will not be undersold. We cannot be undersold, and we mean it. It's a Crazy Eddie Christmas in August audio blowout blitz. Get anything and everything in audio.
And that's a real commercial. But it looks like a fake commercial. It really does.
Those crop up every once in a while all around the country. Just, publicity stunts and things.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
All right. Well, thanks everybody again for joining us this week. Do appreciate all your input.
Now, I saw Colonel Carl. I want to know what Colonel...
Oh, Columbus.
It's Columbus.
Columbus, Mississippi, Carl.
Oh, it's not a rank.
No. He may be rank. I don't know. I haven't been around him, so.
Yeah. Time for a shower, Carl.
Okay, so I was going to ask Carl what his rank, why he needs to put his rank there.
I don't. Is he in the Air Force? Carl, are you still there? Carl, calling Carl.
And he seems to be a girl because he's put Miss.
Oh,
so,
Carla.
Miss Colonel Carl. He can't have all those. No, it doesn't work. Sergeant.
No, Miss is not Miss. It's Mississippi.
Oh, okay. So he worked for a living. That's what. Don't call me sir. I work for a living.
Sergeant. Okay. So he is an Air Force sergeant at Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi.
Ah, okay. That is decoded.
In the Swedish Army. Now, come on. I don't think that's...
he said he was in Sweden originally.
Why would you want to be in...
Yeah, that's why he was asking Nick to repeat the Swedish phrase over and over again.
Oh, so...
Wow, you guys really were not paying attention.
What are you doing?
I saw that he was from Sweden, but that was many years ago.
Yeah, he's been here 34 years.
Some of us pay attention to the show.
I saw that.
Can he do a Swedish chef impression? Because I used to love that Swedish chef.
Can you make Swedish meatballs? That's all I want to know.
Yeah, no, just go to
Those are
IKEA
really good.
and buy them. They're brilliant. They're
okay. Swedish Army retired. Did you marry somebody from Columbus, Mississippi, maybe?
Or did they just throw you out of Sweden?
Put you in Columbus, Mississippi, which is a beautiful place. Anyway, enough of this. Swedish is my native language. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and stop the stream, I believe.
Oh no! Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Bye.
Thank you. Great to be back.